across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. It's 3 minutes past 10 o'clock, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connection device, thank you, as always, for your company. Great to have you with us. It's another big, tough news day, though. If you do miss anything of the show, do go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, well, of course, disorder continued for a second night in Belfast. Not as extreme as it was the night before, though. Police used water cannon there against masked rioters near a hotel housing migrants. Belfast knife attack suspect Hadi Aladid, who appeared in court yesterday, it's now known, was granted asylum through a controversial fast-track scheme introduced by the Tories to reduce the asylum backlog in 2023. It involved filling out a 10-page questionnaire and not even a face-to-face interview. Do you feel reassured yet? Do you? Do you feel reassured? I'm not sure I do. And people smuggling gangs are using flights from Dublin to bring migrants to the UK, while only one asylum seeker, this is no surprise, has been returned to Ireland since 2020, despite an agreement and a deal to do that. I think for everybody, I think this is just another deep sigh day, and judging from the calls that we've heard this morning on JK's show, I think we're all in the same boat. But don't worry, the government is on the case. They are, I think quite rightly actually, calling some of those people, so calling themselves protesters on the streets of Belfast last night, what they actually are, which is, let's face it, racist thugs. If you're going door to door looking for people who are black or brown because, well, they're migrants and frankly trying to burn down their houses or attack them, whether in an asylum hotel or in a house of multiple occupancy or a family home, you are just a racist thug. You put on a mask, you wear black, pull up your hood. You know what you're doing. You don't represent the rest of us. But in doing what you do allow the government, you do allow the authorities, you allow the police, you allow everybody to put all the blame on them and to pretend that the people who are angry about what is going on, angry about the spate of criminality that we are seeing from migrants, particularly illegal migrants in this country, that we're all just like that. We're all racist, we're all bigots, we're all potentially violent at any time, day or night. When that isn't true, we have reasonable concerns based on the facts, and the facts that we know, and probably really only know because of social media. So what is the government's solution? Well, apart from just calling everyone a racist and a bigot and telling off Nigel Farage and Elon Musk alternately every single day because everything's their fault. No, it's actually social media. So, yeah, as much as we do have the Russian bots and the Chinese bot farms trying to sort of distort things, and yeah, we do have some serious far-right agitators, both at home and abroad, who do try and stir things up. But we also have ordinary British people sharing information, sharing their views, discovering that when they think, is it just me? No, it's not just you. We really do all, pretty much most of us, feel the same way. I mean, not the lunatics on the far left. They still think this is all a price worth paying. Women and girls being raped and abused and groomed by gangs, people being almost beheaded in the streets, terrorist attacks, numerous thuggery and violence and theft. No, they think it's a price worth paying for a wonderful, diverse, fantastic, multicultural country. The rest of us, I'm afraid, don't. And we've been telling the government that for a very, very long time. And when we share information with each other on social media about what we see and what we feel and what we think and what we want done, that, I'm afraid, is the biggest crime. That is the thing that really bothers the Prime Minister and really bothers this government and the authorities, because they don't want us to be doing that, because noticing what's happening and talking about what's happening is the real crime here, not the actual crimes and atrocities and outrages that we are talking about. And that's why their solution, as always, to everything when we, apparently the great British public, get it wrong, is another clampdown on social media. How do you think that's going to work out, folks? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Love to hear your thoughts as well on this extraordinary, just absurd situation where the Belfast knife attack suspect, this is Hadi Aludid, was granted asylum in the UK just a few months after arriving here via Dublin under a fast-track scheme that just involved filling out a 10-page questionnaire, nothing face-to-face, and then granted 5 years leave to remain here. Sudanese national, let's face it, he was never going to get deported. Only a handful of people who've arrived from Sudan have ever been deported, so you may as well be fast-tracked to just being given full asylum. That's what we're doing in this country. We're just handing out the right to live here, by the way, on our ticket, paid for by you and me and our taxes, to just random men who've arrived from war-torn countries. Don't even bother meeting them. Don't even bother checking their background. Fill out a questionnaire. Off you go. Tick, tick, tick. Well, from now on, I think the computer should say no, don't you? I want to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV before it's censored. Get your messages in now before we're not allowed to. And of course, you know, calls are charged at the national rate and text costs one standard network rate message. Delighted to say today, I don't think there's ever a day when I don't introduce him like this, but what a great day to have him on. Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. Good morning to you.
Good morning, or should I say it in a broad Belfast accent?
Belfast, yeah, exactly. Our northern Irish correspondent today. Look, there's so much you can bring to this from your personal experience, your work, your background, your birthplace. Just talk very briefly, first of all, about what we saw in the streets of Belfast the last couple of nights, because I think Hilary Benn, the Northern Ireland Secretary, is actually right to call out that this is racist thuggery. It's not a protest. You know, protests are what you see when you see men and women in the streets days on end. Even when it's raining, there's always a giveaway, who are calling for change peacefully. Going door to door, burning down the homes or trying to attack an asylum hotel. Sorry. That is racist thuggery, isn't it?
Oh, 100% is racist thuggery. And in Northern Ireland, it is a very tolerant society in most areas until something happens to trigger. And in both communities, both loyalist and Republican communities, as we label them, and this has got nothing to do with loyalism or republicanism, there are elements there that are have got the ability to coordinate action very quickly indeed, and they're looking
They've done this before.
No, they do it at virtually any excuse, and they look for opportunities to do it, and this is given an opportunity. And the trouble is, as you said in your introduction, what it's doing is it's giving the government an excuse to turn around and say all of this thuggery is the problem, and not actually go and deal with the issues that I think are bubbling away in the background across the whole of the United Kingdom.
Well, exactly. And again, you know, when thugs behave like this, they can write everyone off who's got a concern like this, and then they blame it on Nigel Farage or Rupert Lowe or Elon Musk. I mean, the idea that Elon Musk is the problem, I don't think he helps sometimes. But by the way, would we have a grooming gangs inquiry, a public inquiry, if it wasn't for Elon Musk? I don't think we would.
No, and
I don't think we would.
And the other thing is, and people are going to say, oh, you're crazy here, you're taking this too far, but it's actually true. These different groupings that exist in Northern Ireland and the same in the rest of the United Kingdom are, if you go far enough back, being stirred up by foreign powers, by the Russians, by the Chinese, because they understand how much political capital it takes in dealing with domestic issues. And that political capital then isn't being used in international geopolitics.
But also that just sowing discord within Western societies. A lot of this mad stuff from pro-Palestinianism,
100%, that's all.
Changing our foreign policy in the Middle East. Plus also, I mean, people don't realise, plus even a load of the trans stuff, they stir all this, everything that promotes division and undermines sort of your cohesion, they are behind a lot of it. Not that our happy little lefty white liberals have not happily sucked all this nonsense up.
Of course they suck it all up. And you know, Northern Ireland is always somewhere where things will go from being peaceful, calm, but once you get a trigger, it goes to very violent very quickly.
Isn't it?
And it's.
I'm a big fan of the water cannon, though. I'm always gutted that Boris Johnson bought his and never got to use them in London. I mean, I'd water cannon people on the tube and people cycling on the pavement happily every day of the week. But you know,
and the police service in Northern Ireland is one of the few police forces in the United Kingdom that every officer is armed because of the threat that's there. That isn't causing huge problems. We need to get that across the rest of the country. But you know, within Northern Ireland and and dealing with this, this is happening in tiny little areas. It's not across the whole of the
exactly,
province.
and it didn't get worse from night to night again.
Correct.
Now, this is the thing. I don't want to get caught up in the, well, let's just talk about the riots. Well, they've just done it. Not riots, the thuggery last night, because actually we need to talk about, the real important stuff. One, I think this announcement from Liz Kendall, the Science Technology Secretary, that they want to crack down on social media content, they say, in times of crisis. I mean, I would say, guys, we've been in a crisis for quite a long time with the problem of mass controlled illegal immigration. For some reason, these people didn't seem to think that this was a crisis. The rest of us who think it is, they've been telling us to shut up and not talk about it. She said that they're going to allow Ofcom. They want to basically allow the regulator Ofcom. They're in charge of us too, to impose a crackdown in terms of heightened social and political tension, to require tech firms to take tougher action on material that could incite violence or disorder. Again, could. Now, we saw what happened after Southport. We saw the absolute outrage. Again, the people who were throwing bricks, absolutely. People saying, go and set fire to that asylum hotel. Absolutely put those people in prison, arrest them, charge them and prosecute them. I've got no issue with that at all, and no right-thinking person does. But people talking about, or sometimes getting information wrong because it was being stirred up on the internet, people talking about how angry they are, and, that is not inciting violence and disorder. I don't want people, I don't want mums being put behind bars, well-known Lucy Connolly case, because of that. But also, having seen what happened during lockdown, and, people taking our YouTube, Google taking our YouTube page down for disinformation, interviews with scientists and medics, world-class scientists and medics, about COVID, about masks, about infection rates and things, stuff that was informative and which, by the way, was correct at the time and known to be correct now. More disinformation was put out by the government press conferences than was put out by us. That's absolutely. We didn't get everything right, but damn sight more than they did. And we're told, we're sort of, we're causing trouble. The government's and Ofcom's interpretation of what could incite violence or disorder is not something that I would trust.
No, I wouldn't trust it either. And the first people that this is going to affect, actually, are the police. Because the police are monitoring social media to try and see where you're getting groups and trying to identify individuals that are there. And there are open source intelligence tools out there where I can put a geofence around a particular area and look for keywords that are coming out, any social media post that's there. So if you're looking for riots coming together and people coming together because they're swapping ideas, that's what the police will use to say we need to put our resources here or we need to put our resources there.
Or if you live in Birmingham last November, you're the police and you've got a load of Islamist extremists and communities representing them saying we're going to basically have people on the streets beating the hell out of any Jews who come from Israel to watch the Maccabi Tel Aviv match. Instead of coming to arresting those people, you just
facilitate them.
Ban the Jews.
Yes.
I mean, no, but literally.
I know.
We're talking about two-tier policing again, and that's what it will be. It will be two-tier policing,
Yeah,
and we
definitely.
saw that over the Southport riots as well.
Yep.
This is not the solution. This is how the government uses this to control us. The thing that we have done wrong this week, folks, because the vast majority of us are not inciting violence. We're not putting on masks and going onto the streets because that's not what British people do, right? The thing we did, our crime was noticing. Our crime was noticing the pattern of migrant violence. That's what we would do. That's our crime.
And this is where government ministers are getting it wrong. Tony Benn, the Northern Ireland minister, turned around and said that this was an isolated incident. Well, try telling that to the 12-year-old girl who was raped by an Afghan asylum seeker in Nuneaton. We're hearing almost, not just weekly anymore, several times a week of attacks.
There's an ongoing court case about a 17-year-old girl who allegedly raped by 4 Afghan
Exactly, and we're hearing of several attacks, whether they be attempted murders, attempted beheadings, right through to rapes. It's all violent attacks
and I wonder also,
perpetrated by military-aged men who are asylum seekers.
How many knife attacks have there been in this country of which there are not video footage? Because watching that video footage of the crime that was committed on Monday night, we have an alleged suspect, but there was a definite crime. Unless you've seen that footage and you can see quite clearly the sawing of the neck that is going on, how would we know that any other knife attack that has been charged, perhaps convicted, involves an attempted beheading. And then one of the reasons why people are so horrified by this is it's not because we're all racist. Hello, all the lefties, the Owen Joneses and others. It's got nothing to do with... OK, for some people, for some masked thugs, it might have something to do with race. Not for the vast majority of British people. The vast majority of British people couldn't give two hoots what colour someone is, but they do give two hoots about whether people are law-abiding, whether people have a right to be in this country, which is, again, part of law-abiding. And they do care about... There's a certain level of barbarity.
Yep.
That is the concern. It's like with the grooming gangs, like with there's a level of barbarity and that feels alien. We have our own wrong-uns. We have evil, awful, horrible people. You know, we've had the Moors murderers. We've had the Harold Shipmans. We've got enough of our own wrong-uns. You don't need to import more of them. Yeah. I think is a pretty sensible way of thinking. Yeah. But look, let's talk about how we import people. The suspect in the Belfast knife attack, this is Hadi Al-Udid. He appeared in court yesterday. We know that his victim has lost an eye, his left eye, and I mean, still very seriously injured in hospital. This man was granted asylum in the UK under a controversial fast-track scheme. It was brought in 2023 by Rishi Sunak. Now, the Home Secretary at the time, rather embarrassingly for reform, maybe you could argue, was Suella Braverman. Now, left the Tories now with reform, and of course the Immigration Minister was also at the time was one Robert Jenrick, formerly the Tories, now, of course, with reform. However, certainly Suella Braverman has made it very clear she had objected to these fast tracks. She had objected to the refusal to come out of the ECHR. She, of course, he actually got granted his asylum in September 2023, having arrived in February 2023. He'd applied properly in June, but actually Suella Braverman was sacked only a few weeks later in November of that year, and said that she had been trying to speak out on this issue and was being shouted down on it within government. So I think there's a fair defence there. But basically the idea was Rishi Sunak said, as Prime Minister, he would clear the backlog of 92,000 asylum cases. It's rather bigger now. And it's exactly the same thing that Keir Starmer has been doing and the Home Office is doing under Labour, which is you can clear the backlog. It's very easy. You just grant everyone leave to remain. You take them off that to-do list and you put them on that list. And even if they get completely to stay, so they're no longer receiving money via the Home Office, they're just on benefits, we're still paying for them. It just comes out of a different pot, but it still ultimately comes out of our pockets. And those people are still here, living on the streets and living on us. Because no, funnily enough, they're not all engineers and doctors working in the NHS. I know, I'm as surprised as you are. But that's the case. But again, whenever they talk about clearing backlogs, what they mean is brushing it under the carpet. And again, hoping we don't notice. Yeah,
opening the floodgates. You know, if any Labour minister turns round and criticises Rishi Sunak for what happened here in opening the floodgates, and Boris Johnson opened them beforehand, then they need to turn around and criticise Keir Starmer, because he's opened the floodgates even more by fast-tracking virtually everyone that comes through and says that's the way he's going to deal with the backlog. He said that as part of his manifesto run-up to the election. He said that post-election, and that's...
It's actually easy to do, but it's just that's
what the current government are doing. They're just giving people the authority to stay for as long as they want.
The reason
we
why,
need to be throwing them out.
And the reason why this man, Hadi Al-Udid, by the way, all he had to do was fill out a 10-page questionnaire. I mean, seriously, some 30-year-old fighting-age man coming from a war-torn country.
And will have been provided in his home language.
And yes, of course it would have been, translated and everything. A 10-page questionnaire, no face-to-face meeting. I mean, words fail us. I mean, but yet this is how mad it is. That said, we're happily handing out tens of thousands of pounds to loads of young Britons and older Britons who say, oh, I've got mental health problems, I can't work. And we're giving them basically meal ticket for life, paid for by all of us. And again, that's not happening face-to-face either. Again, this is all completely collapsing. But this is the thing, though. What did we know about this man? And again, why had he travelled all the way to Northern Ireland, through Ireland, through France, all these safe countries? And we know why, because you're basically going to be allowed to stay. But like, people from Afghanistan and Sudan, I think, Eritrea as well, there are a bunch of countries where basically there's no point even going through the motions of trying to deport these people. They're never going to be deported because the countries won't accept them back. They can claim they're war-torn, it's unsafe. Why the fact that we've got 3 million people who've left Sudan? I mean, 2023, there was a massive jump up in the number of people. A lot of people are saying that's because of this fast-track system. No, there was a massive jump up largely because that was when the civil war in Sudan really kicked off. But 3 million people left Sudan to live in neighbouring countries, in Chad, in Ethiopia, in South Sudan. Well, you know, mostly the women and children, but the young men have come here. They don't need to be here.
No, they don't.
There are plenty of safe places they can be. Yes,
Rwanda.
with their families back in neighbouring countries. Why should the neighbouring countries take the burden? Because they're neighbouring countries. Sorry.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
literally, not our problem.
Yeah.
Not our problem. You cannot, the left cannot at one point say, we need to stop interfering in the world, we need to stop being colonial power, stop, you know, let the countries do what they want to do. Well then, on the same basis, why is it my problem when everything in these countries turns into a basket case? I'm not responsible for what happened in Sudan.
Yeah, we have to stop paying for these people. You know, anyone who is of military age, who is male, who is not accompanied by your family and all the rest of it, because they're properly fleeing and they've been properly persecuted, should be automatically put and deported to wherever. It doesn't. I don't care where they go, but they're not allowed to stay. And if for some reason they can't be deported, they should be held in secure camps.
I mean, this is the number one. And this whole, like, the government's going to be going on about, like, well, we're getting people out of asylum hotels. Brilliant. Living in my local bedsit. Brilliant. So I don't know they're at the Holiday Inn at the top of the road anymore.
Put them in secure
but they're
camps.
going to be in a bedsit in my street instead. Yeah. Brilliant. I feel so much safer,
they have committed a crime by coming into this country in an undocumented way, and therefore they should be... we should get the law changed so that crime has a life sentence.
That's the thing. Exactly.
And we put them in prison camps.
Absolutely.
And we build prison camps specially for them.
Absolutely. Well, look, I mean, we know, you know, people smugglers now are guaranteeing, they obviously often guarantee of entry to the UK. If you come via Ireland, it's considered the Irish route, considered a very safe route. You don't have to go on your channel boat. But of course, I wonder, like, how are they getting from France or the other European mainland to Ireland? Are they flying, or how are they getting?
They're coming the ferry. They'll get,
because it's EU.
In France, you know, when they're in there, they'll get a document to say that they're an asylum seeker and everything else. Because we've got Ireland's part of the EU, then they'll get in a ferry and they'll come into another EU country.
But they're not in the Schengen area. There are still checks.
They're not in Schengen. There are still checks that are coming in, but the Irish won't send them back, especially if they know that they're going north. And the criminal gangs that are doing this, you know, are making sure that the routes are properly secured through financial means as they get people. Of course, they're bribing people.
Yeah. But again, you don't really have to bribe anyone to get over the border from the Republic of Ireland.
Oh, no, you don't.
There are 300 entry points. There's no
checks whatsoever. There are bus loads being picked up from the ferries in the Republic of Ireland around Dublin and bussed straight across the border into Northern Ireland. There are train loads that are going through. There are taxis. Uber taxis are being booked to take people from the ferry port into Belfast.
I bet you can't guess how many asylum seekers have been returned from Northern Ireland to Ireland over all this period.
It's less than 2.
It is. It's 1. My guess is that they were voluntary. They wanted to, like, join their girlfriend or something.
And I get they came back again because there are no checks on the border.
I mean, it is. You know, you have to laugh or else you cry. Yeah. You have to laugh. What can I say? And apparently this latest new EU deal is going to make Britain even more attractive to migrants as well. I mean, we are going to hell in a handcart. But remember, the problem is you noticing. How dare you notice this? How dare you talk about it? How dare you demand that when the Prime Minister says, I will not tolerate this, that he actually stops tolerating it and does something about it. It's a bit of a giveaway that you won't tolerate something, that you do something about it.
But he is tolerating it. He's not tolerating doing anything about it.
Absolutely. Let's get to your calls. We'll take a quick break. I do want to hear from you. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. We'll get to your messages up next as well. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get to some of your messages. We'll get to some of your calls coming in about, particularly the Belfast knife attack suspect, Hadid Alodid, granted asylum in the UK under a fast-track scheme. Your reaction to that, and also all of the debate over what's been going on this last few days. Adam says Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman need to be held to account. Well, yeah, their argument is that they were in the Home Office, but they were fighting against this stuff. Whether we choose to believe them or not. Connor says this dodge of accountability needs to end. It's disgusting that people in power have signed off on this madness. That's a good word, Connor. Disgusting. It actually literally is disgusting. Theo says, get them gone, all of them. Jean says, people who legally enter a country have to prove their identity and worth and ability to contribute to the society. It is insane that someone who just shows up does not have to meet the same basic standards. I mean, absolutely. I had to fill in a form when I was arrived in Madrid the other day. You actually had to say whether or not you had the funds to look after yourself, for the 3 days you were in the country. I mean, not that anyone checked, but do we ask those questions? Mary says whoever granted this man the right to remain needs to be held accountable for failing to protect British citizens. Fast track them away again, says Justin. Oh, amen to that. And Doug says, my reaction, make Europe safe again. Millions must go. I'm afraid that's the territory a lot of us are in right now. Let's go to the callers. Andrew is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew.
Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Philip. Off to Madeira, you really are Judith Chalmers in disguise, aren't you?
Someone has to take over a job. The mantle's been passed on.
You were brilliant in the opening statement you made. You could have just gone down the wine bar, kicked back and relaxed. There's nothing in any way that I support those racist, barbaric people last night. But Philip understands the reality of this. In the past, both Catholic and Protestant peoples would identify a house that had either a Catholic or Protestant, and they would just move them on. Yeah. They know how to do this. Set fire to buses, the police go with the fire brigade, do 5, police don't have the resources, then do whatever you want. These people are skilled at this. They can go forever. And look at Drumcree. They went on there for so long, they used up so many police resources, and into the next 3 weeks, we got marching season. Yeah. Now, when you've got anger and you've got threats, in between it is a vacuum and you need leadership. Yeah. The individuals are racist, I get this, but it's nothing to do with this. This is about immigration. It's gone wrong. You've failed. If you solve that, the problem will go away. Yeah. But Northern Ireland, when the Catholic and Protestant come together, and they formed regiments and they fought in wars, ironically, they solve things, and this is going to be...
Well, I'm not sure that's not how I want things solved. I have to say, I did think the irony of Jerry Adams, of all people, tweeting yesterday about, we can't have this sort of violence in the streets. Like, I'm sorry, this is exactly what the organisation of which you were the boss of the political wing of would do. I mean, in terms of burning people out of their houses because you didn't like them. Andrew, thank you for that. Again, I do think the Northern Ireland aspect, you've got a lot more going on there. Dave is in Pembrokeshire, wants to have his say. Hi, Dave.
Good morning, ma'am. In 1958, I joined the Royal Navy.
You don't sound old enough.
I am 85 this year.
You sound very sprightly, sir.
I am very sprightly. I drink lots of Guinness and lots of Chardonnay.
Well played.
Yeah. Before we were allowed to get onto the train, the Admiralty train at Waterloo Station to take us to Portsmouth, a chief petty officer gave us all a blue card, which we had to sign. That blue card said, I hereby vow to serve and defend my Queen and country until my dying day, and to treat all women as I would have my sister treated.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. We weren't allowed to join the Navy unless we signed that. Now, today, I watch what is being destroyed, my vow and my country, by 650 dumplings sat on the green benches of Parliament.
Yeah.
I would ask you, how in my last few years on this planet can I come to terms with that?
Well, hopefully in the next few years, while you are still hopefully on this planet, we will try and get this resolved, because I do think that people have just had enough, and politicians are just, a lot of them are just so out of touch with what people expect to be done now.
Yes, you are so right.
I really do think they don't get it. I think they really, really don't get it. I don't think, Labour Party even understand Labour voters.
They don't understand what we all went through and gave in our years on this earth. And they've just lost the plot.
Yep.
I served on many ships, and this is late current issue. I served on many ships together with some wonderful Northern Irish and Southern Irish lads. And boy, did we ever get on.
This is a family show. I don't think we'll be allowed to tell those stories, Dave. With all due respect, we need a pint of Guinness and a bottle of Chardonnay to do that. Dave in Pembrokeshire, thank you very much for that call. 10:34 is the time. Philip Ingram is chuckling away. I'm feeling you might have had a few nights out with Dave over the years, but you just can't remember any of them, either of you. We're going to go to a quick break. Keep your calls coming in. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Up next, going to be talking to DUP's MP Sammy Wilson about just the madness of what is going on, and not just these awful, racist, riots in Belfast, but the fact that someone can win asylum in the UK under a fast-track scheme just filling out a questionnaire. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 10:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer and this is Talk. Philip Ingram still with me, former senior military intelligence officer. Delighted to say we're now joined by Sammy Wilson, MP. He's a DUP representative for East Antrim. Very good morning to you, Sammy.
Good morning.
Thank
I
you.
hope I'm not one of those dumplings that your last caller was referring to.
I think he was speaking of you all very fondly, to be fair, Sammy. He certainly was. Look, let's talk about what's happened last night. And again, I don't want to get caught up in, just focusing on the violence we saw on the streets the last couple of nights. I think rightly called by the Northern Ireland Secretary, Hilary Benn, racist thuggery, people going door to door searching for black or brown-faced people to burn them out of their homes or out of asylum hotels. But was this trouble on the streets, is this representative at all of how the people of Northern Ireland feel about the horrific crime that took place on Monday night?
It's not representative of how they believe we should react to a national problem which needs to be addressed by this government. And I'm sitting here present going into one of the working class estates in my own constituency, one which has become a lot of tension in it because of the number of immigrants who are now housed in this estate, the impact that has on local people. and local services, etc. So there's a very real problem here, Julia.
Yeah.
And, you know, my worry is this, that the violence will become the focus rather than the problem. And the government is brilliant at doing that. Saying, oh yes, these are all thugs and are racist and everything else, and therefore, if we could get rid of these people, we've got rid of the problem. We haven't.
But also implying, but even openly stating, that the problem is anyone talking about it, anyone expressing concern and demanding action, and lumping all of us, law-abiding citizens who would never dream of masking up and throwing a brick or setting fire to someone's home, that we are basically the same as them.
Yeah, and I mean, what sparked all of this, and the incidents that sparked all of this, and the individual who was involved in that incident, epitomises the problem that we face here in the United Kingdom. Here is somebody who came from another country, moved through 2 safe countries, came into Northern Ireland, on the basis of the scantiest of information, was granted asylum and given a visa for 5 years. We didn't know anything about his background or whatever. And then thousands of pounds of UK money was spent on the individual. Now, that, I think, shows the kind of problem that we face, that we have got a government which has lost control of its borders. And don't forget, this happened under the previous...
Yeah, in 2023,
This wasn't a Labour problem at that stage. And yet, it seems that the government at that time thought the way of dealing with a backlog is to simply tick the box. We have dealt with 20,000 or 30,000 or 40,000 asylum
well
claims.
Done us.
And how do we do it? We simply open the doors, give them asylum, hey presto, they're off the waiting list, and then it becomes an internal problem for the United Kingdom. And until that is addressed, the pull factor which encourages people to want to come here, the routes by which they do come are closed, and once people do get in here, that we quickly move them back out of the country again, and we don't make ourselves an easy target for everybody who wants to come and benefit from
and everyone
the taxpayers' largesse in this country.
Exactly. I mean, you know, this man, the Belfast knife suspect, I mean, as you said, he'd been in France, he'd been in the Republic of Ireland. Why did he want to come to Northern Ireland? Why did he want to come to the UK? Because we are a soft touch. Emmanuel Macron has said, you're never going to solve the problem, people wanting to move from France to Britain, until, not that they haven't got a huge problem there, but we've got those pull factors. It does seem fascinating that whether it's the Labour government or this was Rishi Sunak's government that introduced this fast-track scheme that was just literally a 10-page questionnaire for someone, not even a face-to-face interview, that their way of solving the problem exacerbates it by making it more obvious and easier and quicker that you're going to be able to stay. We understand that the smuggling gangs are now offering the Irish route as the safe route and the guaranteed route. You get into the Republic of Ireland, you get your bus or your train up to Northern Ireland, you're guaranteed you're going to be able to stay. I mean,
and Julia, here's the thing about it. The Secretary of State and the Minister has admitted in the House of Commons they haven't even spoken to the Irish government about this. And I suspect that one of the reasons is they don't want to disturb the Europeans. They're aiming for the Great Reset.
God forbid we shouldn't upset the EU.
But the Irish government had no such squeamishness about it. When the movement was the other way, after the Rwanda deal was struck and many people in Great Britain thought that they were going to get thrown out, what did they do? They came to Northern Ireland, went into the south to go there, and what did the Irish government do? They put checks on the border.
Yeah,
they checked buses and trains to make sure that immigrants from Britain did not go into Ireland. What do? We simply say, yeah, get on the bus, get on the train, come on up, and we'll quickly deal with your case and give you asylum. Yeah. And that's the problem. We have a government which is not willing to deal with this problem because they don't want to annoy people.
Yeah, well, again, they're still trying to kowtow to the EU and think for some reason that at some point the EU is going to be on their side. I think they've been very clear that they're not, including, by the way, the member state that is the Republic of Ireland when it came to enacting our democratic vote for Brexit. I know you're a big supporter as well of that. We've got this common trade area, common travel area, which has been, it's nothing to do with Brexit, nothing to do with the EU. It's been in existence for more than 100 years, allowing free travel, not just between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, but also with the rest of the British mainland as well. And many of us, I'm from Republic of Ireland of stock on one side of my family, and many Brits will have that family link. But realistically, when we have free movement across the continent of Europe and free movement between the EU mainland and the Republic of Ireland, is it viable to maintain that open border between the two Irish states and indeed down the Irish Sea?
Well, I think that, first of all, the common trade area actually gives the government leverage, because the Irish are the people who really want that common trade area or common travel area to exist, because it's easy movement for their citizens, millions of whom travel across from Dublin to Holyhead and England every year. And so, if the government was really serious about this, what we'd simply say is, look, we will put checks on your citizens coming into Great Britain, unless you start checking people who, first of all, come into your country with the intent of coming across the Irish border or going across the Irish Sea into our country. And I think that there's considerable leverage that the government has to make sure that the Irish government stop these illegal immigrants when they enter the Republic. And then send them back.
Absolutely. And travel and checks. I mean, it's difficult across the border. 300 different entry points.
But they're not difficult. No, but they're not difficult, Julia.
Why not?
If you stop them, if you stop the people coming in at Dublin Airport, or stop them coming in at Rosslare, or stop them coming in at Dublin,
entry point. You're not going to get everybody.
There are three entry points. And if the Irish government were told, look, the price of the common travel area is that do those checks at the few entry points in the United Kingdom, or else that you're going to lose the benefit of the common travel area. And, it surprises me that the government is not more robust in closing this route off. And if they don't, then Northern Ireland's going to become the conduit for people
this is the
who
thing.
want to get into Great Britain.
When it became harder to get people in via the back of lorries through the Eurostar and other Eurotunnel, then the smugglers simply moved down to the beaches. And when Calais route gets closed off, the Belgium closed off more to France, they'll go back somewhere else. They'll simply move down the coast and move to different routes. We know that's what they do. There is so much money and so much demand, and there will always be a supply of people willing to offer this to people. We're not going to counter this unless there is no demand. And the only way of ending the demand is you don't get to stay. If you are staying, you are in a not very pleasant prison camp with no freedom, no ability to work. Or you're deported. That is the only way we are going to stop this travel, isn't it?
And as far as, if you look at it historically, at one stage, I think there were about 7 countries in the world that didn't have visa arrangements with the United Kingdom. And people were coming in through the Republic. And the government of the Republic at that stage, quietly, if people came to Dublin Airport and they came from those countries, then they were stopped, and the UK authorities were notified. So there is precedent for this, albeit on a much smaller scale. But if we're serious about dealing with this problem, and if the Irish government is serious about helping us with this problem, and if they really want to keep the common travel area, then there are ways of dealing with this issue.
Okay, can I just pick you up on that?
At the end of the day, we've got to stop this easy access to the United Kingdom by making it clear: you try to come into the United Kingdom illegally, you'll be shown the door the next day.
You said if we're serious about dealing with this. Do you think the government is serious about dealing with this?
No, I don't think they are.
But this is it,
I don't think they are.
If you're serious about dealing with it, there are ways. We know how to deal with this. We know there are precedents, like in Australia, how they dealt with their boat people. We know how to deal with it. The government after government after government is refusing to deal with it. That means they're not serious about it, right?
And they're not, and for a number of reasons. I mean, first of all, the Labour Party depends very, very heavily on ethnic minority votes in a large number of constituencies.
I want to point out an awful lot of ethnic minority people in Britain are actually very unhappy about mass uncontrolled illegal immigration.
But an awful lot are also kind of pushing for it too. I think that secondly, they are not prepared to take on this European human rights nonsense, and they know that if they're going to stop this, they're going to have to deal with the ECHR. And lastly, I think that there's still this legacy of, we should be we want to make it a multicultural country. It's a great idea and everything else. And that at the top of the Labour Party, you've still got this elite who are totally out of, I mean, it was the same in the Conservative Party. This elite who are totally out of touch with what ordinary people have to put up with when you have uncontrolled immigration.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And you said you've been talking to people in Northern Ireland about that yourself. Sammy Wilson, always good to talk to you, DUP MP for East Antrim. Thank you. Quick word from Philip Ingram, listening to all of that.
Yeah, Sammy talks a lot of sense. He's saying, he's saying everything that anyone who has got any understanding of what's going on across the whole of the United Kingdom is saying. And Sammy put it quite eloquently into that whole of the United Kingdom context.
Absolutely. 10:48 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Robert Bates. He's Research Director at the Centre for Migration about, well, apparently another EU deal that will make Britain even more attractive to migrants. As if that was possible. This is Talk.
The UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. 10:50 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer and this is Talk. Let's talk right now to the Centre for Migration's Research Director, Robert Bates, who joins us right now. A very good morning to you, Robert.
Morning, Julia. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much for coming on. I have to say, I mean, does a day go past when some issue about migration isn't in the news? As much as the Prime Minister and the Northern Ireland Secretary and many others would like to make this about racist thuggery and about problems on social media, the stuff that we're talking about this week does fundamentally come back down to issues of immigration and particularly mass uncontrolled illegal immigration, something you have been talking about, both legal and illegal, for a very long time. But this Belfast knife suspect, Hadi Al-Adid, who was being charged with attempted murder, that horrific attempted beheading in the streets of Belfast on Monday night. We know as of yesterday that he won asylum in the UK under a fast-track scheme introduced by Rishi Sunak's government in 2023. Not even a face-to-face interview, just a 10-page questionnaire, and was allowed to stay on that basis. And this is all part of a scheme to basically fast-track people to basically, clear up the massive backlog of 90-odd thousand people. Is this how the government that currently now is saying that they are going to try and clear up that backlog? Is this what they're doing too?
So what happened in 2023 was the Sunak government did everything they could to make the numbers appear good, whilst the problem remained the same. So it was, of course, these fast-track schemes, but it was also increasing the number of implicit withdrawals. So an individual loses touch with the Home Office, we're just ending their asylum claim. No attempt to track down that individual. I think what Labour are doing is slightly different in that they are rejecting claims at a slightly greater rate, and therefore the initial backlog is coming down. But they know full well that the appeals backlog is surging to record numbers, and individuals now are waiting up to 60 months for their appeal to be processed and to be finalised. And this is all because we simply, in the asylum system as it currently operates, and if it is to continue, we don't have individuals that are at the appropriate level to make these informed decisions. The Public Accounts Committee found just last week that there are ill-suited, their quote, individuals that are actually making decisions on complicated cases as to whether individuals can stay.
Ill-suited in what way?
Undertrained, under-resourced, with an incentive structure that sort of effectively nudges them towards approving asylum claims rather than rejecting them.
As we've seen in the benefit system, the more you do, the quicker you can do it, and tick, 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 great, I'll get paid more.
Well, exactly. And when the focus, the top line political focus is on those headline figures of a backlog, then there's going to be no support to those individuals that actually want to keep the country safe and to make sure that ne'er-do-wells are kept out of the country. So what has really happened since this asylum crisis exploded is that there's been gerrymandering with the top line figures, but underneath it, the individuals still arrive in record numbers. They're disappearing still in huge numbers. Labour have lost 22,000 asylum seekers. They don't know where they are. They haven't conducted research into where they have
living
gone.
in a street near you.
Well, quite, and we simply don't know where they are, what crime they might potentially be involved with, what their intent was when they arrived here, and yet we seem to be continuing with this idea of community resettlement, putting them in HMOs and so forth, rather than going down the illogical approach of detention and deportation. I think the common travel area argument that's exploded and the debate that's exploded around it is almost at a right time, obviously under atrocious circumstances. But when we bear in mind that the EU is about to introduce its new asylum pact and Ireland has sort of surrendered its opt-out and decided to go full metal for it, then we realise that actually what we see over on the other side of the Irish Sea is a huge problem waiting to happen, because the Home Office, again, doesn't track individuals that are claiming asylum via that route. It doesn't actually know the number of individuals. Ireland is likely to sign up to all kinds of solidarity mechanisms, which sees them take more migrants from the EU. It's also likely to engage with legal pathways for individuals coming straight from the Middle East or Africa and so forth. And we will see an explosion of crossings from the Republic of Ireland into Northern Ireland as a result, a direct result of this EU pact.
Absolutely. And got added to that, to the fact that the lunatic government in Spain is going to be giving 500,000 illegal migrants, largely from North Africa, basically, citizenship, which case they've got EU free travel rights. They'll be able to travel as well. I mean, this is going to explode in everyone's faces. You know it, I know it. I sometimes think they know it, but they're just kind of kicking it along and just hoping, well, I just won't be in power when it all kicks off, when it all goes off. But as per usual, and I think you put your finger on this, which is the solution. The problem is always get it off the front pages, get the headline figures looking good, make it just look better. People don't like the asylum hotels. Get them out of hotels, put them in local bedsits instead. Oh, people don't like the bedsits, put them somewhere else. There is always people don't like people being moved into a former military camp. Bring them in under the cover of darkness so people can't see them. Just censor social media so people can't discuss it. Call everyone a right-wing thug because they're protesting, even if they're doing it peacefully. They're not the genuine racist thugs on the streets of Belfast in the last couple of days causing mayhem and horror. But it's always about basically make the problem look like it's gone away rather than tackling the actual problem, which is the arrival of tens and tens and tens of thousands of undocumented men from often war-torn countries with very, very different cultures, alien cultures, as the Hilary Benn, the Northern Ireland Secretary, balked at in the Commons the other day, coming to our country and far too many of them, not all, but far too many of them, committing very serious crimes, including rape, murder, theft, and other thuggery. Why? It's my question to you. You've been doing this for a little while. You look at this every single day in your job. Do you think that the people in charge, whether it was Rishi Sunak with this fast track, whether it's Keir Starmer now, Boris Johnson, whatever, do you think they don't care? Do you think they don't think it's a problem? Do you think they do care but they just don't think they can do anything about it? What is stopping them from doing the thing we all know they need to do, which is mass detention, mass deportation, out of the ECHR, all of this stuff? What is stopping them doing what needs to be done?
I do think a large part of it is a certain set of assumptions that have been baked into decision-making process that are effectively taken as immovable gospel, and therefore actually politicians take it upon themselves to operate within preset parameters as to what policy options can be taken. So with Johnson, it was, the advice of the OBR or the Migration Advisory Committee has to be followed. Yep. With Rishi Sunak, it was, the ECHR and a flat-out refusal to even countenance having a conversation about it. And if you actually consider any of the immigration fiascos that we've seen over the last couple of decades, they have all rested around a politician unable to, or unwilling to address those fundamental problems. Now, of course, some politicians, and I would argue Keir Starmer is one of them, are perfectly happy to effectively see Britain's borders wide open. But even those that do have some semblance of intent and desire to tackle this find themselves that willingness running up against a greater willingness to continue to adhere to a set of a priorities that just simply bind their hands and not to risk what they think will be a political backlash with a front page of a left-wing newspaper decrying an attack on human rights or so forth.
Oh no, and the first family that are detained or deported, there'll be the 3-year-old child crying. The BBC will be all over it. The Guardian, frankly, the Times will be all over it as well. And then they'll go, OK, we'll give up on it. But they don't see the British people who are in that predicament saying we've had enough.
No, and it is always the concerns of the public that are considered last, and it is it is the journalistic circles that they want to keep favour with.
Yes.
Or it is
the dinner party circuit in North London, to which I am no longer invited.
It does have a bad rep. You probably count yourself lucky you're no longer invited. But it's that circuit, it's international organisations like the UNHCR, where a lot of diplomatic and political capital has been invested. It's a lot easier to avoid a manifesto commitment to bring migration down than to risk offending your peers in sort of highbrow elite.
And to be not thought of as a nice person. Apparently, we're not nice because we've got concerns about immigration, and that's how they paint us. I mean, worse than that, obviously, we're all racist bigots for not wanting open borders. But there we are. Robert Bates, brilliant work. It's from the Centre for Migration Control. Thank you very much indeed. Going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Philip Ingham, get his thoughts on all of this, get your thoughts as well. Lots of calls on the board, not a surprise. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. I'm also going to be talking about that Met Police deal with Apple to have a kill switch on phones, so once they're stolen they're no use to anyone, so they won't be stolen. Oh, what a brilliant idea. Why didn't they think of that before? This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. Fast approaching 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk, the other home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And you are listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, you're watching on YouTube or your connect device, and you are very, very welcome indeed. If you've missed anything from the show, and why would you have done, you can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, I'm going to be talking more about what's been going on in Belfast. Also going to be talking about Keir Starmer refusing to rule out tax rises to pay for an increase in defence spending. Also, by the way, very interestingly, that announcement from Reform UK kind of disappeared under all the other big stories, but a big change in terms of VAT for basically your white van man. A lot of sole traders and small businesses in terms of that VAT threshold could make a real difference, and a real difference not just to people's pockets but to the economy as well. As always, I want to hear your thoughts on everything. I'll give you the details of the number, but you know what we're mostly getting your calls on today. But what is your reaction to particularly the Belfast knife attack suspect? That's Hadi Al-Adid, charged with attempted murder and appearing in court yesterday after that horrific knife attack on the streets of Belfast on Monday night, in which a man was almost beheaded. He was granted asylum in the UK back in 2023 under a fast track scheme instigated by the then Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to basically try and clear the backlog of applications. Brilliant. So if you want to get rid of the backlog, you just basically just give people 5 years to remain here. Tick. Job done. It was after, I kid you not, filling out a 10-page questionnaire and not even a face-to-face interview for a man coming from a war-torn state like Sudan. Pretty much no chance of deportation. That is how people get into the country. I would like to say that I think there are more checks on me coming back from a weekend in Europe for my passport control questions being asked to the customs officer than there are on random men from random countries in the Middle East, North Africa or further afield turning up on our shores and saying, I demand to basically spend the rest of my life here on the public taxpayer's ticket. Why on earth we are queuing up and doing biometrics at, Barcelona airport when these guys can just rock up and get to stay forever? Absolutely defies belief. I want to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate, and text cost £1, standard network rate message. Philip Ingram, I'm delighted to say, as always, joins us on a Thursday. Former senior military intelligence officer. Also, Northern Ireland, born and bred.
Hey, born and bred.
Born and bred. Good to have that perspective there. Now, look, lots to talk about the disorder, lots of focus. Hilary Benn, the Northern Ireland Secretary over in Northern Ireland, talking about the men who are, and they're always men, masked thug, got a mask on, dressed in black, got your hoodie on, a lot of them encouraged by social media posts from the genuine far right, by the way, the genuine far right, not the people that the government calls far right, you and me. They clashed with police. 12 police officers were injured. They basically grab, concrete blocks and bricks and things, dig them up, garden paving stones, smashing them into big wheelie bins, then wheel them to the site so they've got their weaponry. I mean, say what you like. They're organised, these thugs, going door to door to try and find black and brown people to force them out of their homes, setting fire to homes. They've got water cannoned outside. They're trying to make their way to a particular migrant hotel, discussing despicable, yes, racist behaviour. This is not a protest. This is just, I think, racist thuggery. But it does allow the government, it does allow the authorities to focus on that, look at these awful people, and not focus on the actual reason why the vast majority of us who would never dream of throwing anything, fire, brick or otherwise, at a police officer or hounding anyone in the street for the colour of their skin or their migration status, that paints us all basically the same colour, that we're all bigoted, we're all racist. Anyone who's got a problem with basically an open door policy to any, let's face it, mostly young man from any war-torn country, yes, an alien culture, coming to our country and living here, paid for by us and putting us at risk. The spate of attacks. Now, this is a case that's sub judice, so this is now a suspect, but with numerous crimes now documented, serious, violent crimes, murder, attempted murder, GBH, rape, sexual assault, grooming gangs, child abuse, theft, huge scale, which is being brought to this country by people who have no right to be here. But the government can blame all of us as being in the same basically the same box as those racist thugs. They're doing us a disservice, those people.
Oh, hugely doing us a disservice, because they're allowing the government, as you said, to deflect. The government is going, oh, brilliant, we can deal with that, because people see the pictures of that, they see the pictures of the rioting, they see the pictures of people being burned out. We'll solve that, and therefore, in the public's eye, we've solved the problem.
Yeah.
No, the problem is brewing and brewing and brewing. And the difficulty is, and this is what the government doesn't realise, that what we're seeing in the streets of Belfast, we are that close to seeing that across the rest of the UK.
Nigel Farage warns about this, and he did it after the Henry Novak case and two-tier policing. You know, we've had these warnings about after Southport and all these other cases, Nottingham killer. I mean, just again and again and again and again, that when people warn, look, we are a tinderbox, things could go up. Yep. British people don't tend to riot. Now, look, we have cases we've seen, you know, after Mark Duggan killed by police, quite rightly. We had those riots in August 2011 in London. They did spread further afield. We had the Southport riots, so across large parts of the country. We've had other sporadic, you know, Brixton riots in the past. We are largely not a rioty kind of country, okay? And when there have been riots a lot of the time, when it is, for instance, people in Brixton or in Tottenham thing, we're often told, or Black Lives Matter, we need to talk to those communities. We need to understand why they feel that rage. Whenever it isn't someone of a minority ethnic group, suddenly they're just racist thugs. Now, I think the rules should apply on both counts. But the thing we've got here is that the people who are out on the streets rioting aren't representative of the people who are peacefully protesting. And even the people who peacefully protest aren't necessarily that representative of the people who are angry at home or on social media, who are talking about it at work this week, who were talking about it with their family and friends, talking about it down the pub, who are anxious and worried, concerned for them and their children's safety and their safety and the future of the country, the future of our culture, future of Western civilization. Yes, it really does stretch that far. But the government doesn't seem to listen to anybody. No, they don't. However they protest, or indeed, a lot of us will say, however we vote.
Yeah, they don't. And you know, from an intelligence perspective, intelligence is about predicting what's going to go on in the future, so that decision makers can do something about it before it happens. And you know, I'm applying all of my intelligence experience to say that this country is at the edge. You know, Nigel Farage was doing the same, but they accused him of stirring problems. He's not.
He and Elon Musk are the problem, apparently.
We've got the government terrorist advisor who has been turning around and saying that the country is is a tinderbox just waiting to happen. If the government doesn't deal with the thing that is causing that, which is this undocumented migration of fighting-aged men into this country that are costing us a fortune, that are committing these heinous crimes. Not all of them, a small percentage of them.
But too many.
But far too many. And 100% of them that are coming in are undocumented, and we don't know anything about their past, and they're illegal. They need to deal with that first and foremost, and robustly.
The issue is always, again, that we've got announced a crackdown. Ofcom's going to be able to have more of a crackdown on social media.
That's not cracking down on the problem.
No, exactly. But their whole thing is, you know, disinformation and also, you know, incitement to violence and the like online, and making social media companies. They mean X. If X was owned by one of the lefty, you know, right-on liberal folk in California and not Elon Musk, they wouldn't have a problem with X. You know that, I know that, we all know that. I mean, to say the quiet bit out loud. But they've got a problem with Elon Musk because he's criticising the government and he brought shame on the government over the grooming gangs inquiry, etc., etc. But I don't think Elon Musk is being helpful at this current time. I've got to be honest with you. But I'm sorry, I defend his right to say it. If people are inciting violence, that is a crime, and you can clearly see it. I do not trust the government or Ofcom to make the decision about whether or not something should be censored. I do not trust them. They have censored us quite incorrectly before, and they will do so again. And again, with all of these issues, the issue is always with the people's reaction to the problem, to the crime, to the horrors, to the threat, as opposed to dealing with the threat. This is the equivalent, I mean, genuinely, this is equivalent. They're so obsessed with violence against women and girls. This is the equivalent of saying to a woman who is afraid of her husband because he beats her every day and controls her. This is saying to who this government, by the way, proclaim they care desperately about. This is the equivalent of saying to her, if you just stop complaining about it, and if you just could put makeup on your bruises, and just just be a bit more understanding about why he was, why he behaved like that, then this would all go away and it wouldn't be a problem. That is literally what they are saying to the British people. If you could all just stop noticing, if you could all stop talking about it, if you could all stop being angry about it, then it won't be a problem anymore. They think we are the problem for noticing and caring.
And we're seeing two-tier standards across the board here from our government as well. How many of our current government took the knee when George Floyd was killed in the United States and interfered in US politics? So, what two-tier standard is there whenever they're criticising Elon Musk for interfering in our politics? They've got no right to do that whatsoever. This is, we've got duplicity across the board here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, there's no doubt at all. And the fact that this knife suspect, Hadi Alodid, who appeared in court yesterday, he won asylum in the UK under this fast-track scheme without even a face-to-face interview. And we've just been talking to a couple of guests, DUP Sammy Wilson and an expert on migration. Always the solution seems to be to any issue over people's concern about illegal immigration. The solution is always make it disappear on paper so that there aren't stats coming out regularly from the Home Office for the Office for National Statistics saying, look how many people are living in asylum hotels, or look how many people are sitting on the waiting list. You just clear the backlog. And it's pretty similar to what the government is doing now. We'll clear that backlog of people by approving everybody. They basically, because you may as well approve people from Sudan, as this man was from Sudan, came in via Paris and then via Dublin, because you've got a snowball's chance in hell of actually deporting him to Sudan, and you've dropped the Rwanda scheme, so you can't deport him there. You can't send him back to France because Macron will get upset and the EU get upset. So we're stuck with him. So you may as well give him a 5-year visa. And they think, this is my worry, I think they actually think that's a solution to the problem, despite the fact it actually encourages the next wave to arrive.
I've got another solution for them. If they don't bring Rwanda back again, create internment camps. And I will use the internment word, and round all these people up because they've come in illegally. If they want to stay, they stay in an internment camp. They're not allowed to leave ever. They'll get the 3 square meals a day.
The human rights lawyers will be all over this. My thing is, you can leave at any time.
Yes, exactly, if you go back to your country.
Or anywhere, I don't care. I'd rather we didn't make them say France's problem, but you know what? Or Ireland's. France and Ireland are quite happy to make them our problem, so I'm not, that's up to them to deal with it. I think you and I both know, and I think our audience is savvy enough to know that eventually this is all going to have to be resolved. We've seen even, the wokest countries in the world like Germany, pretty sensible chancellor now, who got in despite the rise of the AfD Alternative for Deutschland on the right in that country, and that's got some very sensible elements. It's also got some pretty nasty elements. We need to be clear about that. And realising if a mainstream party did not act, then they would be out of office. We've had mainstream party after mainstream party who say they will act, elect on a manifesto saying they will act, and they don't act. They are going to be out of office. Now, it may not be the next election, it may not be the one. Eventually, people will have had enough. My worry is that people don't wait until it's a democratic vote, because people, after 2016, in fact, since 2010, we did before that with Tony Blair, bringing in mass uncontrolled legal immigration without ever asking our opinion. And when we did give our opinion again and again, election after election, ignoring our opinion and lying to us about doing anything about it. We've had that again and again, the undermining by our current Prime Minister of the Brexit democratic vote, biggest vote for anything ever in the history of our country. I don't think a lot of people trust that their democratic vote will make a difference anymore. And that scares the living daylights out of me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And if people then stop voting, then they're just accepting the disasters that are coming and coming. But I'm picking up, and it's a gut feeling. But I always told my analysts to go with their gut. The gut feeling of an underlying tension in this country that if it blows, it is going to be really bad. And this is where Nigel Farage is actually warning that this could happen.
And then he's being blamed for warning.
Yeah, he is, but he's benefiting from it because he's giving that alternative voice that's out there for people to come and
an alternative, peaceful, democratic voice. I don't think the government authorities, I don't think they realise how much Nigel Farage is saving their bacon. By being a voice of, and again, you can say, Rupert Lowe, I think there's too much ego involved with all that. But again, people who are standing in a democracy, calling for peace, but are speaking out about this stuff and making sure that people have an outlet that isn't putting on a mask and burning people out of their homes.
He's acting as a pressure valve because he is saying the things in public that a lot of people are too scared to say because they think they'll be arrested.
The thing is, people aren't too scared anymore.
Well, they're getting to that point, yes.
And that people aren't too scared anymore, and they're speaking out. And I know a lot of people who I've known for years who consider themselves liberal left, they are speaking out about this stuff now. And I think that is very, very telling. Again, I think the cat's out of the bag. The cat's out of the bag. And the government after government, whatever political hue they're thinking they're not going to deal with this, it's just no longer an option. It's just no longer an option.
Yeah. Our lefty human rights lawyer, Prime Minister, and his lefty human rights lawyer, Attorney General, won't do anything about this because it's against
but they will
DNA.
clamp down on our freedom of speech online.
Of course. Because that's looking after these poor asylum seekers as a priority over the British public.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not asylum seekers, they're economic migrants, they're men of fighting age, and they've got no right to be here. 11:18 is the time. Look, we're going to take another guest in just a couple of minutes. I do just want to get to this another story. The Reform UK have announced a major new tax cut aimed at white van man, pledging to raise the VAT registration threshold from 90,000 to 150,000. Now, this is actually costs like £2 billion tax cut. I think actually it will reap more money. There is so much evidence of a massive drop-off. As soon as you hit that VAT tax cut, basically, if you don't know about this, if you're charging your services and you make more than 90 grand, even £90,000 and 1 pence, you have to charge VAT on all of your bills. So if you're, you're able to operate as a plumber or gardener or whatever it is you're doing, and a cleaning service, and you're earning under that figure, you're not charging VAT. The point at which you earn more, your prices go up 20%. That's what they do. They go up 20%. You don't get that money, but it's paid by your clients. So there's a real incentive not to go above that unless you can go substantially above it and grow your business. So there's this massive cut-off of business activity and economic activity at the 90 grand mark. It literally goes flat for a very long period because it's not worth people's while. I think if you raise this to that sum, to £150,000, and then you can raise it by inflation is the plan, instead of keeping a static number, you are going to be looking at a whole heap of more expansion of small businesses, and more economic activity. I think this would easily pay for itself.
100%. I run a small business and I make sure it stays below the VAT threshold for that very reason.
Yeah.
And if the VAT threshold was raised, I go hallelujah. It's not just having to charge more, it costs me more because it costs me more in accountancy fees and therefore, to do that, it takes the time away from me doing what I need to do. I have to employ someone else to do that. That costs me more and it's just not worth it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, classic red tape, or just put tax on everything and not realising you actually end up with lower economic activity, lower growth and lower tax take.
Lower tax take.
Absolutely. Look, there's plenty more to talk about, including, I've got to mention this as well, the Metropolitan Police are patting themselves on the back for their ability to tackle the phone theft in London. They've had a 50% fall, the Met Chief has been telling the media today, in the number of phones being stolen in the Westminster central London area. And they did this mind-blowing thing to make it happen. This is genius. You'll never guess what they thought of doing. They started actually arresting the people stealing the phones and using the tracker device, which is on every phone, to track where they were, follow them, and using intelligence. And they arrested people and imprisoned people, and then the crime rate fell.
It's groundbreaking.
They should get like a Nobel Prize for this.
Yeah, definitely.
This is so clever.
Phone security, it's very clever.
And they've now done a deal.
Coppers arresting people. My goodness, whatever next.
Mind-blowing stuff. Well done, Met Police. Well done. Actually, when someone calls up and says my phone's been stolen, not just shrugging and giving a crime number and going after the phone thing. Especially when they go, it's in number 22, Smith Avenue, and I can see it there, literally on my own. Find my phone. But they've also done a deal with Apple to install. They want to install a kill switch that will make snatch devices. iPhones are the ones they want, made by Apple, and basically you can turn it off and lock it. But of course they can unlock it. Frankly, any local little dodgy shop in Kilburn in London can open them. But basically kill it. So basically the phone has no value. Again, why did no one think of this before? Anyway, 11:22 is at the time. Love to hear your thoughts on everything we're talking about. Loads of calls on the board. Up next, we're not going to take your calls like we normally do. Take them a little bit later, in about 10 minutes' time. First up, we are going to be talking to the investigative journalist David Shipley about everything we're talking about today. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:24 is the time. Let's talk right now to David Shipley. He's an investigative journalist and a former prisoner, as we often keep pointing out. David, I always feel like it's a bit rude to keep pointing this out about you, but it does give you, I think, quite a unique take on lots of things.
Oh, I mean, I put it on my social media profile.
Well,
so
then, okay, good. Do you know what I mean? It does feel a bit rude, but there we are. But David, look, we're talking an awful lot about what's been going on in Belfast, and so much of the conversation right now is about the riots. 12 police officers injured, water cannon being used. Hilary Benn, the Northern Ireland Secretary, calling them racist thuggery. People going door to door, trying to find black and brown people, migrants, to hurl them out of their homes. I mean, absolutely horrible stuff. But a lot of it seems to just moved on from the actual crime that was committed on Monday night. Now, the case is sub judice. We have a man who is behind bars, going to appear in court again in 4 weeks' time after appearing yesterday. This is Hadi Aladid, a Sudanese migrant who had been given 5 years leave to remain in the country, having arrived in Northern Ireland from Southern Ireland and indeed from France, where he initially arrived in the EU. But we're not kind of talking about so much the actual fact of the horrific crime that took place on Monday night, which is where our focus should remain, shouldn't it?
I think it should, so long as we're considering why these sorts of crimes keep happening.
Yeah.
I think the government would love it if we just talked about this one horrific event as though it happened completely in isolation. Yeah. It was just an entirely random happening. And you see that in the way the British Parliament's been discussing this, the British government, but also the Northern Ireland Executive, when they gave a press conference 2 days ago, made it very clear they just wanted to treat this as a sort of isolated, horrible incident, and that any effort to relate this to conversations about our migration policy, the open border that Northern Ireland has with Southern Ireland, for example, was just not acceptable. And I think we have to, the way we honour victims is by understanding why terrible things happen and trying to change our policies so they don't happen as much or don't happen at all anymore. Yeah,
except, of course, we're constantly told, I mean, again, completely different case, but the Henry Novak case, and again, with the victim in this case, who lost an eye, sadly, and is still in hospital, critical injuries, neck wounds, face wounds, and back wounds from this horrific knife attack. That we're told, the families don't want people to be divided on this. We're constantly told, don't talk about this, don't talk about this. You're just upsetting people. But we do have a right to talk about these stories, and we do have a right to discuss the reasons why. And instead of discussing the consequences, violent protests on the street of Belfast, or people saying things on social media that some people don't like and want censored, we should, as you say, talk about the causes, which is, why is someone who's been alleged to have committed this crime in the country in the first place?
Well, listen, I'd actually go further than saying, I actually we have a duty to discuss this stuff. I don't think any society could function in a way where any victim of crime could have a veto on that matter ever being discussed politically. I'm afraid, of course, victims of violent crimes have suffered horribly as their families. Yeah. But the job of a state, the job of politicians, is to understand why things happen and change them to make things better.
I don't think that is what they think their job is anymore. That's the
I don't
worry.
think it is. No, I think they want to emote in this very vapid way. They want to talk about anything other than the real issues. They are terrified of facing the reality, which is actually that mass migration has made us less safe. But the dam, I think, is finally starting to break. So Jonathan Hall, Casey, who's the government's independent advisor on anti-terror legislation and on national security threats, national security legislation, came out last night and said, actually, mass migration is creating a national security risk for us. And I think we all know that, and I'm sure that all the viewers know that. But actually, for someone so crucial to the establishment, to the state, to finally be saying it feels really significant.
Yeah, and again, not very easy for Keir Starmer or Hilary Benn or any other one else to say, well, Jonathan Hall is just a rabble-riser, far-right, bandwagon jumper trying to stir up trouble. No, you've literally got this man in this job to advise you on what the real threat is. Yeah. But this is the thing, we're constantly told what the real threat is. We see the facts and figures before our eyes. We see all the stories again and again. And yet the authorities seem intent on, as you say, telling us these are isolated incidents, they're not related. And anyway, we've got all our own homegrown, knife attackers and murderers and rapists and paedophiles. Why are you nasty, racist bigots? Why are you worried about the ones who've come from abroad? I mean, that is genuinely the argument I see played out on social media.
Well, it was also an argument that was made during that Northern Ireland press conference 2 days ago, where one of the politicians said that, essentially that we've got loads of very violent men in this country who are born here. It's like, well, yes, I'm sure that's true, but that doesn't therefore mean we should import more violent men. Sometimes we have to think it realistically. Often, if we're importing people from countries which have been incredibly war-torn, we bring men over who've been in war-torn countries fighting civil wars, a lot of them would have fought in those wars. They will be violent men because they've survived those wars. Yeah. They will often be traumatized because of those wars. They will often, therefore, be very, very dangerous. They will probably, in many cases, be more dangerous than the average person from their country of origin. We're literally selecting for and granting asylum to men who are the most likely to pose us a really high risk. So, of course, that policy makes us less safe. And the thing is, politicians are still in complete denial. One of the Northern Ireland First Minister at that press conference the other day was questioned on the porous border, by which people mean the common travel area, which has existed since 1922, which allows people to travel back and forth from Northern Ireland to Southern Ireland without border checks. And she said it was fake news. I mean, these politicians do not live in reality. The thing is, they have built a system based on lies. They have built a system which has made us all less prosperous and less safe and has fractured our society. And because they are terrified of admitting that, they will just lie and lie and lie. They'll double down on this stuff while refusing to admit the truth, and they will worst of all, they will label people who are telling the truth as divisive, as bad, as far right, for describing reality.
And this is the thing. I've always felt this, and I've written this so many times in columns, is that if they accept for one moment that these men might pose a threat to us, if they allow for one moment that yes, there are such things as alien cultures that are ones that we don't really want to import, if they allow for one moment that migrants, even legal migrants en masse, are not a benefit to our country economically, they allow for one moment that multiculturalism is not a good thing, diversity is not our strength, for which, by the way, there is no evidence whatsoever in terms of creating a cohesive and happy, high trust society. If they allow any one of those things, if they admit that they've been wrong on that, it's like the whole wall's going to come down, and they can't admit anything.
It is, because the whole thing is built on lies. And the thing is, if you build a society, if you build your political views entirely on lies, eventually reality is going to bite. You can only.
Now is it? Because they are intent on it not biting. Their solution. Look, the social media clampdown. We're told, yes, no doubt there's Russian bots and Chinese bots. There are bot farms. There are definitely some genuine far right agitators. People putting their tuppence within, trying to stir stuff up. I know that 100%. But that is not the reason why people are angry. That they think if they can shut that up and perhaps, let's face it, censor. I think they'd like to censor things like the horrific video we saw on Monday night, because if you don't see it, you're not going to be as angry, upset about it. If you didn't see the Henry Novak video, you're not going to be as angry about it until you hear those words, "I don't think so, mate," said in that cold, callous way. That actually they can censor information, censor what we know about what other people feel and think. It will all go away.
I think they would desire that, yes, and that's why. But they keep saying, you shouldn't watch the video. The family wouldn't want you to watch the video. It might traumatise you. There's been a really strong effort to sort of suggest that somehow watching the video is a bad idea, because the thing
I did warn people about. Look, it is gruesome. I think a lot of it stays.
It's a horrible video to watch, and I think but I do think actually we need to face what is happening in our country, and actually we do need to recognise the reality of Britain in 2026. And the thing is, the reality of Britain in 2026 is fundamentally radicalising, because it's so awful, because we've been so misgoverned for so long by people who prefer comforting idealistic lies to reality. And that has to end. If we are going to restore this country and fix it, we have to start being honest about what is going on.
Exactly. If you can't identify the problem, you can't come up with a solution. And look, right. You're somebody who is an investigative journalist, crime analyst. Again, we're told, not every migrant, so not illegal migrants are committing crime, etc. We know that. But the rate of criminality of men, particularly illegal migrants coming from certain countries, you mentioned particularly these war-torn countries, they do have a higher rate of criminality. That is a simple matter of fact.
Yeah, particularly around violent sexual offences. And it's not surprising. If you think about someone like Afghanistan, it's a terrible place to be a woman. Yeah. And so why would you imagine that when thousands and thousands of Afghan men come here, they're going to suddenly treat women well? Of course they're not. This is not there's not any reason.
It's not a mystery, is it?
No, and I think this is fundamentally why, yes, the state does want to suppress the debate. It wants us to stop talking about it because it's awkward, it's divisive. But actually, that wall is crumbling now. They would love to shut it all down. But when you've got people like Jonathan Hall speaking out, I think it's clear that the current regime is doomed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's going to take a while, though. I'm not as optimistic as you. David Shipley, investigative journalist, former prisoner, thank you so much. Really interesting analysis. Philip Ingram, I think he had an awful lot to say, and I think those words from Jonathan Hall are very significant, aren't they? He's saying, when he says something, it's it's him giving advice. He'll be ignored, of course. Yeah. But if Nigel Farage says exactly the same words, he's stirring up he's far-right agitator.
Well, exactly, and this is where the government needs to respond to stuff before it happens and deal with the problem. And I think David highlighted the really important bit that we've got politics by disinformation, politics by lies at the minute, and it's politics by sound bites. That's easy for them. That is easily exploitable by those that want to then skew the picture. We need to get back to politics of substance and dealing with the problem, not dealing with
identify the actual problem and then deal with it.
Not dealing with the consequences of the problem.
I wonder. I'm always fascinated how these people deal with things in their own life. It's things like when they're laundry, do they just think that if you just censor the conversation about whether the laundry needs doing or the dishwasher needs emptying, that then it won't need? Do they not? How do they deal with reality in their home lives?
They get someone else to do it and then they claim it as part of their expenses off the taxpayer.
Ouch. 11:36 is the time. I'm going to take your calls up next. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch on anything and everything you want to talk about. But I think we know what you want to talk about. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 11:37 is the time. Let's get to your calls and messages coming in about the horrific events in Belfast and the government's urge to talk about the reaction to the horrific attack on Monday night, rather than the consequences of it, rather than the actual cause of it. Let's go to Robert, who's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert.
Good morning, or good afternoon.
No, it's morning. It's still morning. Only just.
Good morning, Julia. Before I go on to my point, an amusing fact just coming, or an amusing idea just coming to my mind. It's the World Cup kicks off today.
It does.
Now, I wonder how far we are away from not the England team, but a migrant 11.
I mean, virtually. I mean, who knows? Only a matter of time. Robert, get your salient point. Come on. What do you want to say?
Right. Well, in reference to the troubles that's happening now in Ireland, You know, the only way I can describe it is if you had a dog and every day you beat that dog, sooner or later that dog's going to turn around and bite you. Now, not only is he going to turn around and bite you, he will run out the gate and he will start biting everybody else.
Yeah.
And this is basically what is happening, you know.
Yeah.
People have had enough, and people are taking full advantage of that, some of the thugs. But sooner or later, you know, people will turn round and they will start biting.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When you look at things like, you know, riots, and whether it's Black Lives Matter or whether it's, you know, after police have killed usually an armed suspect, and everyone goes in the streets, and then they're ransacking JD Sports for new trainers. None of that says to me I've got a really strong political idea I feel strongly about. I don't think the British people largely are. We're not rioty people. We like queuing. We like people. We like fairness. We like people to do the right thing. We like to moan about the weather. We like cups of tea. We're not really righty people. We don't vote for the far left. We don't vote for the far right. We're kind of just in the middle. Get on with it, people. It's the reason why our country has been a great country and been so successful over the years. But how do you think? I mean, do you think we are going to have mass riots in the streets? And I don't just mean some thugs who are out for a fun night out. Or do you think there is another way that people are going to make their voices heard?
I've got no time for social media. I think it's like the Antichrist. However, it's helped the public because now the public are actually finding, you know, this is the good side of social media where the government can't hide anything.
Exactly.
I don't like social media usually. I don't like the, you know, I think it's evil, you know, but. It's showing, you know, you can't pull the wool over our eyes anymore.
People can see stuff and we can share. But also, crucially, when people are going, oh, is it just me that thinks this? Oh, no, I'm going to be called a racist or whatever, just for saying something not remotely racist. They can see that other people are saying the same thing. And there is solidarity in numbers.
Well, I was shook up by the incident. That I know you can't talk about it, we won't, but
we can talk about the incident still.
Right, well, I was in hospital when the Lee Rigby thing happened, and I watched that live as well. And there's so many similarities. You see, the thing is, we've got a problem, and the problem is, I feel that coming over on these boats, there's 100 or 200 probably sleepers.
Yes.
And
undoubtedly.
I read an article that Iran were actually paying for their boat money to come over. Now, the trouble is now, 30 years ago, it was organised terrorism, and MI6 could break it down. What you'll get now is isolated incidents after isolated incident after isolated incident, which is almost impossible to police.
Yeah, and as we go, and again, these people who radicalised online were often told, and again, there's crime atrocities, there's rapes, there's murders, but also terror attacks. If you actually look down the names of all the people who've actually committed the major terror attacks in this country in the last 10, 15, 20 years, almost entirely they are immigrants or the children of immigrants, and they have largely acted alone, but a lot of those families have come from places where, they are war-torn. They may have, been radicalised. And we are importing this problem. I really appreciate your call, Robert. Thank you very much. Must bring in Philip Ingram on that, the sleeper cells. We've certainly had warnings before. They know, there are definitely, been Al-Qaeda, there'll be ISIS. When ISIS was largely, not completely destroyed in Syria and Iraq, they off you go back to Europe, sending people in waves across Europe to come back to the West, as you say, to sit and wait and then do their evil deeds when time just was right. Yeah,
sleeper cells are coming in, and the equivalent of sleeper cells for organised crime gangs are coming in as well. And they're being
organised crime gangs have sleeper cells? How does that work?
Well, what they'll do is they will infiltrate a number of different areas with people that they'll say, we've given you free passage across. Whenever we come and tap you on the shoulder, you're going to come and do some work for us. And therefore, that's the equivalent of a sleeper cell, because that's what the terrorist organisations do.
But you are beholden to us.
Correct. And a lot of the terrorist organisations are backed by nation states. They're backed by Iran, they're backed by Russia, they're backed by China, because they know that they can cause disruption if they want to do that at some stage in the future, and therefore deflect from whatever they're doing.
It's a very happy Thursday, isn't it? But there we are. Let's go to Paul in Southampton. Paul, can you cheer me up?
I don't think so, Julia. I mean, it's a Thursday.
Paul, what do you want to say about that?
But not. Well, it was something you said about people pointing the finger at Braverman and Jenrick.
Yeah.
And maybe, I mean, there's nothing they can do. I mean, most of this system is most probably to do with the Windsor Agreement, with the ECHR. But the one thing that's really worried me is how are the French allowing undocumented migrants get on planes and fly around Europe?
Yeah.
How did he do that?
Yeah. That's the thing. I've seen two different versions about how this man got from Paris to Dublin. Was it on a boat? Was it on a plane? Again, so how again, free movement. I mean, look, the problem is the EU having free movement, and the problem is the EU being more worried about a border between us and Calais from our direction to theirs than they are about the hundreds of thousands of people who are entering southern and eastern Europe every year. Care not a jot.
Yeah, it's again. I think he had to come on a plane. I mean, I can't see him getting a boat and going across there. It's just very long-winded. But but I mean, the Windsor Agreement that Johnson signed has condemned. I mean, Jenrick and Braverman both resigned or got booted out because they opposed it.
Well, Jenrick resigned because he said, the Rwanda scheme, it wasn't actually going to achieve anything. A lot of people did say at the time this was more about he'd realised the way things were going, the Tories were going to lose the election. He wanted to get out and be, an alternative. I mean, and there would undoubtedly have been an element of that, whether whatever you agree with him or not. And we've got a lot of time for Robert Jenrick and what he says on this show. But Suella Braverman, I mean, she was sacked 2 months after this guy got this suspect, Hadi Aladid, got his fast-track 5-year leave to remain as an asylum seeker under this fast-track system. She has said this was brought in under Rishi Sunak, and she had argued against it.
Yeah, and maybe they're just pointing fingers at them because they're now reform, and this government will do anything. I mean, even Starmer even lied about what Nigel Farage actually said in his speech, because Starmer said he called for rage and Nigel didn't. But nobody.
Well, he did use the word rage, pure cold rage.
Yeah, but there's using the word and what comes before it denotes on what it's there for.
Yeah, exactly.
And Starmer did not repeat, and nor did Badenoch, by the way, when she spoke to you. She used the word rage as it was.
But again, rage and fury were perfectly justified, righteous even, from this Labour Party front bench when they were in the opposition, when it came to the murder of George Floyd, which had nothing to do with us. But there we are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Paul, thank you. I'm going to have to leave it there. I've got to go to a break. Paul, brilliant call. Thank you very much, although you did not cheer me up, I have to say. Coming up next, we are going to be turning to... there are some other stories around today. We're going to be talking about the latest on defence. Keir Starmer will not rule out tax rises to pay for a bigger defence budget. Big battles going on within the government right now. The man has no authority at all over the country, over his backbenchers, or indeed over his own cabinet. And also the US launching fresh strikes against Iran overnight, and more strikes back from Iran too. So what is going on? Any chance of that peace deal? Any chance of our oil prices going down? We'll be talking to David Patry-Karakos in just a few moments. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Lots of your fantastic calls coming through. Really appreciate that. Keep them coming. 0344 499 1000. A lot of you having your say, of course, on events in Belfast, and of course the whole wider discussion about what is going to be done about this illegal migration. But let's talk right now about, well, something completely different, because it does tie in really to, I suppose, our border security, our ability to defend our nation state. We are waiting God knows how long to find out what that defence investment plan is going to be. There was some talk it might be this week, made very clear at PMQs by the PM that it wasn't going to be this week, but we'll be in a few weeks. We've waited more than a year for it after the Strategic Defence Review outlined what we needed. £28 billion is what the defence chiefs think they need to be spending, and very, very soon. In fact, this year we spent £3.5 billion less than we were planning to do. But big battles over how they're going to pay for any at all increase in defence spending. So where is that money going to come from? Let's talk about this with David Patrick-Karakos. He's a special correspondent at the Daily Mail. Good morning to you, David.
Morning, Julia.
Thanks as always for joining us. Well, headlines today are suggesting that Keir Starmer won't rule out tax rises to pay for a bigger defence budget. We know he's been in battles with other departments, battles over cutting welfare. His backbenchers won't allow that, even though this is what Tony Blair, former Defence Secretary and NATO Chief John Robertson and others have called for, and pretty much any sane person is calling for. We've got Ed Miliband, the Net Zero Secretary, saying he won't cut a penny from his department. Where the hell is he going to get the money from?
It's a very good question, and I think the answer is more tax rises. I mean, look, we have a problem in the sense that no government, and it's not just Keir Starmer, to be fair, has wanted to pay for defence.
Yeah.
We got addicted to American money. We outsourced our defence for a welfare state. Well, the chickens are coming home to roost. Also, there is a problem that Keir Starmer doesn't have any authority, right? Yeah. Everybody knows, or people suspect, he may not even be Prime Minister until, when if Andy Burnham wins, and then we have Andy Burnham as PM, so everything will probably get worse. So we have a PM that has very little authority. We have a government that is very, very reluctant to spend what we need to spend because it has an electorate that is used to living a certain way.
Yeah.
Look, John Bew, the former number 10 foreign policy guy, he said it, look, we have to understand that the world has changed, that the function of the state has changed. There's too much expenditure on welfare. There are too many people who are on benefits. And look, I'm not against them per se. There are people who are genuinely sick. There are people who genuinely have,
let's not pretend that there are millions of people who can't go to work on a Monday morning because of ADHD or anxiety.
Of course, this is the problem. And, if you really want, Julia, to find the money, you start cutting that properly. But if you start doing that, you cut your own voters, your own electoral base.
But this is it. I mean, I have a funny feeling that actually if people thought that the money that was already taken in tax was being spent well and wisely on people who needed it, people, again, I think the most right-thinking people are, very happy to pay taxes to help disabled and elderly and the like, but not the money going on the millions who are swinging the lead. And that's the reality. People don't think their money is spent well. So even though they want more defence spending and may even accept that taxes have to go up for that, they would only accept that if the rest of the money was being spent well, and we know it's not.
Exactly, and you make a good point, Julian. And people are also, let's understand something else. There is a double cost to this, because when you don't spend it now, when all of this money is going on undeserving people, when we do finally have to face a real threat, taxes are going to go up even more, which we will. So people are getting hammered twice. So we're wasting all this money now on people who fundamentally don't deserve it. But when the time does come, everyone's going to get hammered. And we're going to see.
It's a when, not an if. I mean, that's the thing everyone's got to get to grips with. I don't know how many former defence secretaries, former defence chiefs, how many more people who know their stuff are warning us about how much we are not spending on defence and how little resources we have.
It's what you and I have said, Julian. You get this. People keep saying, well, when's war coming? And we've both been saying, we're already at war. Yeah. We've been at war for 20 years, but we refuse to accept it. War is not solely fought. Like, we have this idea of the template of war as World War II. Two armies marching in line in uniforms on a battlefield as delineated as a boxing ring. It doesn't work like that anymore. You can weaponize everything from information to migrants.
Yeah. And we're seeing it playing out. I mean, the fact that this week it's been reported, again, other stories have taken over, but this absurd situation We don't have we barely got a single, frigate or anything that we can send to go and protect our army bases in Mediterranean. We had all of our submarines, attack submarines in port because they were unable to operate, unable to protect our Trident submarines. Our cables, underwater cables, protecting all of our electronic communication, banking communication, supply lines. Unprotected. I mean, again, on the day when I read that, I thought, good God, why are they putting this on the front page? Surely this should be subject to a D notice where the government can stop.
It wouldn't make any difference. Everybody knows.
No, exactly. I was thinking the people who would have known this beforehand would have been the Russians and the Chinese.
Absolutely. It's depressing. And the more you look at it, the worse it gets. And, I want people to understand, it's not an exaggeration. It's worse than you think. A lot of these problems that I've drilled down, and especially around migration, the growth of extremism, and this does not come from nowhere. I've spent, a year and a half now reporting from some of the most sort of segregated areas of London. Not everyone is bad, but there's a serious problem here, and we have to face it. And the problem is, if we don't face it, it is left to the extremes to deal with it, and everything gets very unpleasant. We have to understand the threat, both foreign and domestic, that we're facing.
And it's extraordinary that, again, that even a conversation about our external defence comes down to a lot of the subjects we've been talking about today in relation to what happened in Belfast. Now, let's going a bit
Never has foreign policy been so domestic, Julia. No. It's all one as one now.
Absolutely. And again, it has a domestic impact in the United States as well. We've seen a spate of attacks between the US and Iran over, firstly, the downing of this US Apache helicopter, and immediate response to the US. Interesting that only a day or two beforehand we had the US president calling on Netanyahu of Israel not to respond to attacks on Israel via Iran. But then, of course, massive retaliation from him. But again, retaliation on military sites, on missile sites. And we've seen retaliation against US bases across other Gulf states as well. Trump has vowed to hit very hard. But are we now in another round of tit for tat? Does this mean that any chance of a ceasefire deal, any chance of getting the Strait of Hormuz completely reopened, some deal on nuclear weapons, something that could actually end this war? Is there any chance we're any closer to that, or are we now further away than we've ever been?
Look, I think this is all part of the process, unfortunately. It's painful. I keep saying this. A deal will come for the simple reason that everybody needs it. But one thing I would point out that's interesting, what the Iranians did when they struck Israel, they said they struck Israel because Israel had struck Hezbollah. This is nonsense. Israel's been striking Hezbollah for decades. The Iranians don't care. What happened, your viewers should take note of this, is over the weekend there were protests again in Iran. The students were back on the streets. The Iranians need the war. They wanted to drag Israel back in so they could say, no protest. We have to face the enemy now. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm not saying that the war's going to turn out okay. It's not looking great. But we do not know the extent of the damage that Iran has suffered. When all of this is done, it's going to have to go back to what it does most, oppress its own people, govern. Can it do that after all of the damage?
But they still have a huge number of missiles. Clearly, they've been able to strike US bases across the Gulf, been able to strike Israel. They clearly haven't had their missile stocks depleted.
Well, they were depleted, but they're very good at building them back up again. I mean, the main thing that the Israelis were trying to do was take out their ballistic missile supplies. I covered the 12-day war, which I refused to call a war at the time. I called it the 12-day exchange because I said the war wasn't over. And so I was proved right. And those missiles, look, Israelis hadn't faced missiles of that since the Scud missiles in the 90s from Saddam Hussein. The Hamas missiles are a bit of a joke. Hezbollah's a bit of a... These ballistic missiles, they do damage. They do damage to the Israelis and to the Americans. This is Iran's... The nuclear program now is a point of political leverage. Its ballistic missiles are its kinetic leverage. They're very serious.
Really good to always get you on. David Patrick-Karakos, thank you so much, special correspondent of the Daily Mail. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, I noticed you were nodding at an awful lot of what he had to say.
Yeah, so much in there, and of course,
he knows his stuff. That's what we get him on.
He does. And of course, the Strait of Hormuz is Iran's economic leverage on the world. I think what Donald Trump has got us to a position here, if he doesn't finish off every little element of the Iranian regime, we're now going to be in a perpetual state of conflict with Iran.
Do you think he's willing to do that?
No, I don't think he is.
Because midterm elections, the price of oil. Yeah, but again, neither is neither is Europe really. I mean, we're just like
and we should have dealt with the Iranian program a lot sooner. And we should be coming together.
I thought Obama and Biden getting away scot-free with their failures.
We should be coming together now and say, right, you've started it. We need to properly finish it, so that we can get the world back into a good world order.
Yeah. Well, otherwise, Iran is actually, we're told the IRGC in Iran is actually been strengthened.
They are.
And we've got perhaps more extremist people in power.
They're taking more strength, they're capturing more strength. and they will influence us, what's going on. The Quds Force will be causing more disruption in the UK.
It's all incredibly linked, isn't it? It's just extraordinary. Thank you so much. Lots more of your calls to get on air. Up next, we're going to take a quick news break, and then we're going to be talking to Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, former Conservative Party leader, someone who's been speaking out on a lot of the issues we've been talking about for a very long time. We'll get his take on the week's news. There was a press conference by the Police Service of Northern Ireland. We'll bring you any details from that as we get them. I say your calls as well. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past midday is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining us. If you've missed anything from the show, and you absolutely shouldn't have done, it's my YouTube pages. I've got everything on there. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, I'm going to be talking more about that disorder continuing for a second night in Belfast. Police use water cannon against masked rioters near a hotel housing migrants. Hilary Benn, the Northern Ireland Secretary, has described this as racist thuggery when these masked young thugs, that's what they were going door to door trying to find basically migrants by identifying people with the colour of their skin. Yeah, I think we just call that what it is, racist thuggery. Now, the Belfast knife attack suspect, Hadi Al-Adid, we now know was granted asylum through a controversial fast-track system introduced by Rishi Sunak when he was Tory Prime Minister to reduce the asylum backlog. It involved filling out a 10-page questionnaire, not even a face-to-face interview, and then given 5 years leave to remain in this country. He, of course, appeared in court yesterday, charged with attempted murder after that horrific beheading video we saw after Monday night. Plus, we're going to be talking about the Metropolitan Police discovering the absolute genius of actually doing some police work in order to cut thefts of mobile phones, and their deal with phone companies, including Apple, to make stolen devices harder to reuse by basically instituting a kill switch. If it's been stolen, you basically stop it from ever working again. Then they have no value. Why did no one think of this before, eh? Plus, patients arriving at A&E will have to complete online questionnaires before getting treatment under NHS plans for iPad check-ins. And we've got the latest figures on the number of people who've been forced to, well, have treatment in corridors or cupboards or side rooms instead of in hospital wards, both in A&E and elsewhere in hospitals. We'll bring you all that a little bit later as well. Delighted to say, joining me throughout the show today is Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer and Northern Ireland man, born and bred.
Northern Ireland man.
Is that a terrible accent? It wasn't so bad for me.
It's a terrible accent. Yeah, Northern Ireland man. Aye, good afternoon.
But it is interesting to have your perspective on all this. But again, this story that's been happening in Belfast, this horrific attempted beheading, as we've seen, absolutely horrific scenes. Lots of us have seen that video. Again, I think it's important that we saw it to discuss it. But I did warn people, maybe you don't want to see the video because this is the description. But if we're going to discuss it and have a view on it, I think we certainly need to have seen it. There's no doubt at all that the government thinks the solution to this horrific crime. There will, of course, be a trial of the man who's been arrested and is the suspect in this. But what they really don't want is us to carry on discussing it. They don't want the video shown. We've had the usual appeal, as we have every single time. In any case, the family do an appeal for calm and the like. They don't want riots on the streets. Neither do other law-abiding, the vast majority of us, the 99% of us who are law-abiding majority, who would never dream of throwing a brick or going door to door with a mask on to hound out people because of the colour of their skin. But they also want to shut down those of us who are law-abiding. They want to shut us down on the internet, censorship on the internet, saying that people who incite and kill, they should be taken down by X and other social media. Well, yeah, they're already supposed to do that. We don't need a new law on any of that. But also they don't want us to discuss so much the causes as opposed to consequences. If we've got a press conference coming up in a few moments from the police service in Northern Ireland. We have a conversation about 12 officers being injured and how awful it all is and everyone who's condemned it, who hasn't. We have a conversation about that. Then we're not talking about why was there a man among very many men in Northern Ireland, in the United Kingdom, who had no right to be here, and why was a crime and why are numerous crimes being committed by numerous men who have no right to be in this country from far-flung lands with, yes, let's use that term, alien cultures. Why are they here and why is the government doing nothing to stop it? That is the actual debate we should be having, not who got injured last night on the streets of Belfast.
It is, and it's critically important that we continue to have that conversation so that we continue to highlight the cause, not the consequences, as you've said, because it's too easy. The government is just focusing on the consequences, and what they're going to do is that they're going to try and suppress even more of what we can, our freedoms, so that then whenever there are more consequences from actions, from the causes, that we can't talk about it. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I fear that we are at the edge of a precipice. And if we fall over that precipice, God help the country. And that's the United Kingdom as a whole. That's not just Northern Ireland.
I want to hear your reaction to that, and in particular the fact that we now know the Belfast knife attack suspect, Hadi Al-Odid, who appeared in court yesterday, was granted asylum in the UK under a fast-track scheme. Just a 10-page questionnaire, for goodness sake. What's your reaction to that? What's your reaction to all of the concerns we're expressing today? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Let's join now Sir Ian Duncan-Smith MP, former Conservative Party leader. I want to get him to his take on all of this. A very good morning, good afternoon to you, Sir Ian.
Well, good morning, Julie.
I know, I'm sorry, I've started it. It's my fault. Apologies for that. Sir Ian, there's so much I do want to talk about. Can we just start with the fact that we know that this knife attack suspect, he is a suspect, a sub judice in this case, but that he was granted asylum in the UK, having arrived from Sudan via France to the Republic of Ireland, travelling by bus from Dublin to Belfast to claim asylum. He was basically arrived in February, applied in June, by September under a fast-track scheme instituted by the former Tory Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, when interestingly Suella Braverman was Home Secretary, then Conservative Home Secretary, now with Reform, to basically under this fast-track scheme that involved just a 10-page questionnaire, not even a face-to-face interview. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm trying to remember back how that came about, and it was because there was such a huge backlog. They were looking to try and clear those they felt through evidence from their home country or whatever, that they were therefore not posing a risk to them. That was the whole point about it. They were supposed to be selected out from others where they had evidence. They had documents, all the rest of it. That was the idea. If you didn't have the documents, you wouldn't go into the fast track system. That was what I remember. Clearly, in his particular case, as I recall, he came in across the border with Northern Ireland, and that is an open border. We know that. Very few checks are taking place on that unless you're shipping goods north or south, but generally it's an open border. And I think they'd spotted this, the traffickers, that it's very easy to get them across at that point, and quite a lot of people did come through. So I don't quite know what the outcome. It'd be interesting to know if the Home Office is prepared to release the results of that checking process.
I'm sure they'll claim it would prejudice any criminal action.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what they came up with at the time, or if there were any concerns raised at the time but overridden.
I mean, again, the reality is, again, leaving aside this one particular case, there should be concerns raised automatically by anyone who's arrived in the country illegally, particularly from war-torn countries. That's kind of where the public is. The trouble is, we're just about to have a press conference from the Police Service of Northern Ireland. And again, we're all talking, the government wants to focus on, violent and blatantly open racist thuggery going on in the streets of Belfast that doesn't represent the majority of people who are concerned about the crime that happened on Monday night and the causes for it. We always spend the time talking about the consequences as opposed to the causes, except when it's, of course, a far-right crime, when always we talk about the causes. Blaming of Elon Musk, social media, Nigel Farage, Rupert Lane, blaming anyone and everyone as opposed to the actual problem that is before us, which is that we have basically an open border to any young violent man from any war-torn country or alien culture to come and live in this country and live on the public taxpayer.
Yeah, I mean, the causes are critical in all of this, of course, and the reality is that the only system that would have worked and still would work in my book is that if you come across the border illegally, you'll be sent back to a destination, either your own country or to a place like Rwanda, which was the best deal, turned down by the courts. I would have pursued that, continued to pursue that, but Rishi Sunak wanted to go to the election. I said, take it one more time, show people that what they want is not being accepted by the courts, and then we will change the ridiculous position the courts have in always coming back to the ridiculous European Convention on Human Rights, which has been the problem, overinterpreted by our courts.
I would say misinterpreted, actually.
No, I think I would say overinterpreted completely, about the idea that you can make the right to a family life be the whole purpose and someone.
No, but exactly. No, but I'm saying it's misinterpreted because there's the key article that Article 8. There are two paragraphs to it, and the second paragraph makes clear national security and the rights of people in Britain and criminality overrides that.
I think we're both agreeing, actually.
Yeah. No, exactly. I'm saying, but when people say they're stretching it, no, they are literally misapplying it, in my view.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's my point is that the judges willfully were taking the wrong decision.
Can we take that on, though? I mean, it's all very well, Conservatives
now. We have to
getting rid of the European Court of Human Rights, the Convention of Human Rights. However, we still have an activist legal class. We have an activist judges, activist tribunals. They came up with this. They came up with this madness on their own without it actually being something that any sane person who read those articles would actually have come to the same conclusion on. We've got an activist civil service as well. There's already talk about their planned strike action if we did have reform or Tories or any government in that would actually try and tackle any of these issues. Is it even within the competence of government anymore, elected representatives, to deal with this?
Well, I remember we used to talk about the same problem, the total collapse of government, the inability to govern, before a woman called Margaret Thatcher took over. The threats from some of the civil servants were much the same, that somehow they would bring a close to the government, and somehow they didn't. She took on the miners and beat them. We got this place back into order. We had a country again that we were proud of. It actually rescued people in the Falklands. We took big decisions and she stood by them. And it's about leadership, which is why I do genuinely believe that Kemi recently has made a very strong point. People talk about it's the Equalities Act. In fact, it's not. I was just writing it down. The real problem is the public sector equality duty, which is an unmitigated disaster and has made all of these stupid changes to policing and everything else. And she said, we've got to scrap it. I agree with her. You scrap that, because that's what's been influencing so many of these bad decisions. And the key thing about all of this, and we just obviously in a way agreeing about this, the reality is that people, what they want to know is they live in a safe environment and they'll be treated equally in face of the law. And I think what's happened now is doubts about that. And those are dangerous doubts, because if you doubt the fact that the police will treat you in a way that is equal to everybody else, then you're less likely to respond to the law or to accept it. And I think that's the danger where we take a pace back from all of this, is the sense amongst the public that somehow the police are against them and the law is against them because they are part of a wider population set. And that's the trouble right now. As I've said all along, we are either British citizens sharing the same culture. We are not divided and should not be divided by race or colour. We should be treated exactly the same, whether we're applying for a driver's licence or in front of the police.
Oh, exactly. And I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt you. We just had breaking news. John Healey has just resigned in the last couple of moments as the Secretary of State for Defence.
Not surprising.
Well, indeed. He's written, I've tried to just access it. He's started his resignation letter. This is a letter I never expected to write. I do so now with great regret and reluctance. He's basically saying that he's trying to get this extra defence spending. Obviously been waiting over a year now. It came up in PMQs yesterday for this extra spending on defence, which anyone and everyone involved has made very clear we absolutely need. But he said, we came into government recognising Britain faced a new era of threat which demanded a new era for defence. The Strategic Defence Review, he said, was a 10-year vision to transform our armed forces. He says, though, this new era for defence required further investment through the Defence Investment Plan. We still haven't seen that. He said, you've been unable and the Treasury has been unwilling to commit the resources that the nation needs to defend the country at this time of rising threats. He says, since then, the demands on defence have increased still further, as have the UK commitments you rightly made to the Allies, and basically making it very clear that he is no longer willing to remain as Defence Secretary on that basis. It's quite extraordinary. He said that basically, you know what defence needs. You made the argument, he's saying to the Prime Minister, for this powerfully in your speech at the Munich Security Conference, and without the defence investment plan that meets the moment in this way, he says, I am being forced to make decisions that would reduce the readiness of our forces and increase the risk to personnel and operations and could make the country less safe. I'm now left with no other option than to submit my resignation as your Defence Secretary. Sir Douglas Smith, your thoughts?
Well, I know him very well. I've known him for a number of years. I don't say the same about everybody in politics, but this is a straight player. He's an honest and honourable man in many senses. I've been waiting for this because what's been going on behind the scenes is the Chancellor, who's completely screwed up, by the way, the economy since she took over, the tax rises, the hammering of part-time work, all of these things has left us worse off. And this is the problem. Our deficit's grown, unemployment grown, and we still are not following through on the defence review, which is what he refers to. And so this idea of the Defence Investment Plan, which was meant to be published in the autumn of last year, the Chancellor has blocked it. And she's blocked it because she says, I don't have the money for it, so you better find the money somewhere else, i.e. cutbacks. So she was insisting on cuts to defence, ridiculously right now. They had cuts last year rather than the expansion. So the Prime Minister says we're going to grow the defence budget. All we've seen in the last 2 years is cuts. And what he and his team, by the way, I wouldn't be at all surprised if somebody else goes from his team. He's got some quite serious players there, one of whom, of course, as you know, was an ex-Special Boat Service man. And I know for a fact that he's pretty hacked off with what's been going on. And the thing about government is the Prime Minister, at the end of the day, has to step in when there is a fundamental standoff between government ministers. And the Prime Minister has to decide what the direction of the government is. This is where it's gone wrong, because the Prime Minister now is so weak, so incapable of making a decision and insisting on it and getting them to obey it, that the government has been trapped in this row for 7 months now, and the Prime Minister hasn't insisted on one side or the other. He should step in now and say to the Chancellor, you have a choice to make. You can go to the backbenchers, or you can do as I say and
Well, exactly.
pass
He's the
money
First
over
Lord
to
of the
defence.
Treasury. We've had reports today that Ed Miliband, the Net Zero Secretary, he won't make cuts. The Welfare Pensions Secretary, he wants to apparently make some cuts. We've seen from those Mandelson messages, but apparently, the backbenchers won't allow it to happen.
This is a government in complete chaos. Because I know Pat McFadden for a long time, and I know that he genuinely knows that they need to pull back on welfare. We've passed him all the plans from the Centre for Social Justice, which save over £20 billion. And yet they failed because their own party, their parliamentary party, is utterly against, well, not all of them, by the way, but a chunk of them are against making any reductions. They still have enough majority to drive it through. But the Prime Minister stepped back because he doesn't want to pick a fight with his own backbenchers.
Because he has no authority. I mean, he has no authority in the country, has no authority in the cabinet, and no authority in Parliament, despite having 400 MPs. I think the most damning thing is, this letter. You spelled out the threats last week. And he quotes the Prime Minister in this letter saying, "It is our intelligence assessment and the assessment of other countries in NATO that there could be an attack by Russia on NATO as soon as 2030. That is remarkably short time away." And he wrote, "You know what defence need. You made the argument for this powerfully." And he's basically saying, you know the issue and you're not doing anything about it. It's very interesting. On the show yesterday, actually, someone was pointing out, the Defence Secretary, if he really means it, if he's really concerned about spending, he's going to have to resign. And we have had again and again and again, haven't we, Defence Secretaries and indeed senior figures, Joint Chiefs of Staff and others, who have, as soon as they've resigned or as soon as they've left government, have said, we need to spend more, we can't get more out of the Treasury, nothing's being done, we're not able to defend ourselves. And they're obviously making those arguments behind the scenes, but we're not seeing enough of those arguments being made publicly. And at the end of the day, if you can't get what you know the country needs, this isn't about ego here, you have to resign.
Well, that's exactly what's going to happen. And as I say, I would put the other ministers on watch because most of them privately are very angry about what's going on. The truth is you cannot promise to up defence spending, as the government has done, and then not provide the wherewithal to do that. And so defence is the number one priority of a government. Defence of the realm, that means internally and externally. You have to defend the British public from any threats that may be against them. At the moment, we're living on a shoestring. We had all the ships tied up in port when the US attacked Iran. We had nobody in the Mediterranean for the first time, nobody in the Gulf as well. And the result was they were all up in port, not doing maintenance because they had to save £2.6 billion out of the existing defence budget. This is what's going wrong. And I come back to the simple fact. The Labour Party in government is in a complete and utter mess. They're waiting for the ex-mayor of Manchester to come to their rescue. But this is a man that seems to do U-turns at every single occasion on everything. And we've got a Prime Minister who simply is out of power. He has no power. He may be in government, he may be leading a government, but he has no power to make any decisions. He should insist straight away that they set out the cuts to the welfare budget. They set out the cuts to the net zero, which is, by the way, driving up the cost of our energy dramatically more than any other developed nation. And if they don't like it, these guys can be told, go to the back benches. If you don't agree with my policy, the government policy, then you know where you go. The exit door is over there. I'll wave you goodbye. We can exchange nice letters and you're done. We are going to carry out what the government said they would carry out when they were elected. And that hasn't happened. So it's about leadership. Leadership is very simple. It's a lonely place. You have to do it.
And it's about failed. You have to make the decisions that actually matter. Look, I'm going to bring in Philip Ingram in just a couple of moments, but I do just want to, before I let you go, the interesting thing is, we were talking to guests earlier about, again, defence of the realm, defence of our borders and our interests and our allies, but also defence against, the cyber attacks, defence against the attempts to create disorder in our country and disunity, with things like, the migration and fomenting up trouble on our streets and on social media. Like, we are, as many people say, we've been in maybe not a hot war, but certainly not a Cold War with our enemies, Russia, China, Iran and others, for a very long time.
I have a personal point about this because I'm sanctioned by the Chinese government because I set up
I think a matter of pride, that, by the way.
To deal with their genocide. Well, except that I am followed by certain intelligent operatives from China. I have a wolf warrior that tries to impersonate me all around the world. I know for a fact that we are certainly spied on most of the time, those of us who are sanctioned. The reality is the sanctions have not been lifted. And I have to say this, and it's very simple, and maybe the British public watching this hasn't quite got this yet, but I have to tell you, I think we are living now in the most threatening times that we've seen since the 1930s. The growth of totalitarian states like Iran, like Russia, like China, like North Korea, like Myanmar, more and more states are choosing totalitarianism to govern them, not democracy. We are losing. And this will become a hot war if we don't watch out. And the only way to stop that is to be strong. And we have failed to learn the lessons of the past. This is exactly what happened in the early 30s. Didn't want to spend the money on defense, and we nearly lost the war. That resulted, by the way, in 60 million people dying because we were slow out of this process. And I have to tell you, it's happening again now. It's shocking. I don't mean to try and scare everybody, but we are facing a real change in global politics.
It's a reality check.
Detriment for the free world.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I can see my guest Philip Ingram nodding away to everything. Sir Doug Smith, thank you very much for joining us. Invited you to talk about what's been going on in that migration case in Belfast. We're going to get your calls on that in a few moments, but Philip Ingram, that extraordinary story, former senior military intelligence officer, joining me in the studio, nodding along to a lot of what Ian Duncan Smith was saying. John Healey has resigned as Defence Secretary, a man who's been talked about as a possible, a future leader of the party, very popular figure, very well-respected figure. He has resigned. Basically, we had questions at PMQs yesterday, rather testy affair, as they often are. There's exchanges with Kemi Badenoch about when are we going to see the the Defence Investment Plan. We've had the Strategic Defence Review. That was over a year ago. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and we know there have been battles within government. The MOD desperate to get more money, other departments not wanting to take cuts, difficulty of borrowing more, Treasury not wanting to borrow more, Prime Minister yesterday not ruling out tax rises, but again, whether people are willing to take that and take any more tax rises is a moot point. But unable to get a lot of these other spending cuts that are needed, like welfare, through his own Parliament, his own MPs. John Healey has basically, I think, done the right thing, which is I can't get the money to have the defences that we need. So I have to resign. That's an honourable resignation.
Oh, it is. He's shown moral courage.
Yeah.
But what that tells me is that the Chancellor, who is not the First Lord of the Treasury, the Prime Minister is, has won the argument. So the Chancellor is telling the Prime Minister what the priority for the country is. And the Chancellor is being influenced by Ed Milliwatt with his daft net zero. £13.6 billion his department was given whenever they first came into power. Welfare bill has gone through the roof. That could be dipped into. But this says to me
it needs to be cut by a third.
But that says to me that defence is losing out here, and I agree with Sir Ian that this is likely not to be the only ministerial resignation, and I do hope
Kearns, he's going to be tipped as a possible future leader as well.
And I do hope defence chiefs, those in uniform, if something comes out where they haven't got the funding to do the job that they're being asked to, have the moral courage as well to resign and say
again
we
and
can't
again.
do this.
Everybody says it when they leave the job.
We need people to start saying it when they're in the job.
We cannot do the job.
We cannot do the job.
We are unable to defend this nation. How many more people need to say this? We'd had George Robertson. He was actually in charge of the Strategic Defence Review. He was the former Defence Secretary. He's a Labour man through and through. He was NATO Secretary General. I think he might know what he's talking about. I remember discussing this on air. I think we discussed it with you on air many times.
Very much
after he basically gave a warning, did a speech saying, look, I don't know how many more people, and again, we're in this situation where, Labour backbenchers want to keep giving money to someone who says they're anxious on a Monday morning and can't work, and you want to keep giving welfare to those people, you can't afford to defend the country. It's really that simple.
And to paying for undocumented military-age men
billions of pounds
that are coming in and attempting to murder people, raping and carrying out everything else. And again, the government is in complete and utter disarray.
But I'm going to be very clear. This isn't just a Labour thing. This is the Tories.
No, the Tories started
this either.
this.
But again, there was, But again, there was an economic crash. There was no money in 2010. We know that.
But again, if you go back to when it really started, and Ian Duncan-Smith highlighted at the beginning, Margaret Thatcher was the last person who brought pride to the country.
But there wasn't. Look, every nation state around the world thought this Cold War we can spend less on defence.
Exactly, and Cold War came in, and the person who started the rot, because I've done a lot of analysis into this, was Tony Blair, 100%.
Again, people want more nurses, they want more benefits, they want higher pensions, they don't want to have taxes.
Defence is seen as a pot to dip into.
You never get the credit for spending the money on defence, because basically, if your defence works, you never have to use it. That's the whole point of it. We're going to have to go to a break. We're going to get to your calls up next. 12:28 is the time. We'll get another top guest on this and hopefully take some calls from you on this later in the next hour as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, let's go straight to your calls. We're going to be talking actually to Andrew Fox, a defence specialist, in just a couple of minutes. We've also got Andrew, obviously you've got Philip Ingram in the studio after the shock resignation, or maybe not so much a shock if you're paying attention, of the Defence Secretary John Healey, on the basis that, frankly, we can no longer defend our country while putting our defences at risk by not spending the money that is needed to be spent on defence, which he says he knows that the Prime Minister knows we need to do. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to talk to Richard Tice in just a couple of moments, Deputy Leader of Reform as well. First up, I do want to get to a call or two. Daniel is on the line in Epsom. Daniel, before you talk about the migration crisis, which you called up about, is there anything else you'd like to add in terms of this resignation?
I just think this country is in such a state. I've never known a worse government in my life. And, you know, I mean, the last government was poor, but this mob are absolutely taking the biscuit. They're abysmal, absolutely woeful in every way. I can't believe how bad things have got. The reason I'm ringing is because I think if you look ahead of what's coming down the line over the next 2 or 3 years, I think the migration crisis is just going to worsen and worsen, and things are just going to get so much worse because Labour are now clutching around, thinking of changing their leader. Someone should say to the new leader, are you going to leave the ECHR? Yeah. No. Are you going to get on top of law and order? No. Are you going to address the immigration crisis in our country? No, not really, because I'm not leaving the ECHR. So what is the point?
Yeah, they think it's personality that's the issue, presentation, communication, not the actual policies.
What is the actual point in going through this whole theatre production?
And costly by-election as well.
Yeah, if you're not going to do anything. It's just insane.
Yeah, very good point, Daniel. Honestly, brilliant point. Listen, I'm going to go because I need to get in Peter, who is in Newcastle. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Julia.
Hello. What do you want to say?
Well, I served in the Royal Irish Regiment for a good few years, so a lot of my friends are from East Belfast. Yeah. And I honestly think, listening to your last caller and a few of the callers you've had on, I honestly don't think they understand the level of anger.
Yeah.
It is. The way I look at this, and this is just, I can only speak for myself, but you aren't going to have a situation where you vote for things for 40 years.
Yeah.
You stab us in the back every single time. You try and do it the legal way. You try and do it the political way. It doesn't work. I'm so sick of being lectured by posh idiots who don't know anything about life telling me that you can destroy my country, and then all of a sudden, when a fire gets lit, everyone starts panicking.
Yeah.
Someone had his head sawn off, nearly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, not paying any attention. I mean, again, they don't recognise the significance, don't recognise the level of anger, and people, you know, and again, just, oh, let's have a clampdown on social media isn't the solution. Can I ask you, as a former serving, you know, military man, what do you make of the news that Defence Secretary has resigned, John Healey's resigned, basically saying, you know, there isn't enough money to basically safeguard our defences?
I was in when it was Greg Wallace.
Yeah. Not Greg Wallace. Not Greg Wallace. I've got an absolute Ben Wallace.
Yeah, Ben Wallace. It's the same. It's the same story over and over again. The military's been getting underfunded for 30 years.
Yeah.
It's just one. We'll mess something up, and then we'll blame the next set. Then when they get in, they'll blame them. It's a revolving door.
Yeah, that's the trouble.
People don't know anything about the military. They don't know anything about it.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, isn't it? Really appreciate your call, Peter. Thank you very much. Just going to go down the line now to the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, who joins us to give his reaction to the news that John Healey has resigned as Defence Secretary. Richard Tice, thank you for joining us. In his letter of resignation posted on social media, John Healey has said new era for defence required further investment through the Defence Investment Plan, which we're still waiting for. And he said, we came into government recognising Britain faced a new era of threat, which demanded a new era for defence. He said to the Prime Minister, you know, you spelled out the threats yourself last week. You know what defence needs. You've made the argument yourself. But basically, he said, I would not be able to accept a defence investment plan settlement that does not give our forces the resources they need. I am now left with no other option than to submit my resignation as your Defence Secretary. He says the country could be made less safe. What do you say to that?
Well, the devastating line in an extraordinary letter, Julia, is when he says you have been unable and the Treasury has been unwilling to commit the resources that the nation needs to defend the country. He's basically saying the Prime Minister is putting British citizens at risk of being unsafe, so that all the hot air and blather that we've heard over the last 12 months following the Strategic Defence Review has all been for nothing. And this, I think, puts Starmer in serious, serious trouble, as it does the Chancellor, because basically what John Healey, who is very well respected, has said is that they are putting Benefit Street ahead of the British citizens' safety of all of us.
And we've seen that again and again, haven't we? And again, it's not even about cutting defence, cutting the welfare bill. There's the last bill they failed on, the big revolt from backbench MPs, was about cutting the increase.
And you could fund this so easily, Julia. I mean, I could fund this literally in a heartbeat by scrapping net stupid zero. I could fund it in a heartbeat by not paying voluntary interest on all the Bank of England's quantitative easing money. You could fund it in a heartbeat by not paying welfare to overseas nationals. This is easy to fund with political courage and political will, but there is none of that in this socialist government that just wants to pay people to sit at home.
And this, I mean, look, this is the reality. These are the choices, but these are also the choices that will be faced in the event of Andy Burnham becoming the next Prime Minister, a change of personnel. We've had nothing to suggest that he would take any different decisions and any different moves on this front. And he, even if he wanted to, would face the same issue as the Prime Minister. And as you noted then, the Prime Minister being unable, literally use the word unable, because of the restrictions from the Treasury, fiscal rules, and the fact that he has backbenchers who don't think you should cut welfare.
Essentially, the former Defence Secretary now has said that the Prime Minister is a puppet of Treasury. That's what he's really saying, or of his own backbenchers. He's been unable. In other words, he's not in control of events. He's the Prime Minister. He should be able to do anything in terms of directing money to be spent if he had the political courage, conviction and will. This is going to be an extraordinary couple of days. Andy Burnham is not exactly known for saying anything about defence and security. I think this makes the assumption that Andy Burnham becomes the next Prime Minister in the event were he to win a by-election in a week's time. I suspect you're going to see a whole bunch of different challenges, potentially look out for this, Julia. I've said it for some time. A sort of an outrider, potentially as a sort of a compromise candidate, could be John Healey himself.
And indeed, that was a name that was being mentioned. Do you think this is an entirely honourable resignation on a matter of principle? As people were saying, look, if he really does, if it is an issue, then he should resign. Or is this, does he have leadership ambitions, do you think?
Let's wait and see.
Okay.
Let's wait and see. I think it's, but this is a seismic moment where a former Defence Secretary has basically accused the Prime Minister of putting our safety and security at risk. Thanks a bunch, Prime Minister.
Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, thank you very much indeed for that. Philip Ingram, as former Senior Military Intelligence Officer, listening to all of that. I mean, as he said, this is absolutely crucial. You've been unable, the Treasury has been unwilling to commit the resources. But he's very, very clear, John Healey, in this, saying, I'm being forced to make decisions that would reduce the readiness of our forces, increase the risk to personnel and operations, and could make the country less safe. But he's not the first to warn this. We had George Robertson, the former Defence Secretary under Blair and Brown, and the former NATO head. We've had him saying it. We've had pretty much every former Defence Secretary of every different political hue, NATO people, senior defence chiefs, saying the same thing. Everyone knows this. What is the unwillingness and inability of governments, whether it's Tory or Labour, to get the job done and to assign the right amount of money?
Because there are no votes in defence, is what they think. It's, if they put the money into welfare and all the rest of it, they are paying people to vote for them. And this is yet another example of where the Prime Minister has lied. Whenever the Strategic Defence Review came out over a year ago, he turned around and said he accepted all the recommendations for it, and that in various statements have said that they've all been funded and everything else. Yep. Well, the Defence Investment Plan should have come out immediately. What's quite clear is the wrangling over the Defence Investment Plan is nothing was funded, nothing had been cleared through the Treasury, even though the Prime Minister was standing up and saying we're doing this. He's been lying to us, he's lying to our NATO allies. We're looking stupid as a country. Yeah, I mean, again, I would rely on Poland more than us right now in terms of our defences, that's definitely. For sure. 12:40 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Before we go to the top of the hour, we are going to be talking to Andrew Fox about this. You're regular on the show. We're also up next going to be talking to Mike Neville, former Met Police Detective, Chief Inspector, about events in Belfast. We'll be live in the studio. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:42 is the time. This is Talk. Coming up, we're going to have more from Philip Ingram. Joining us in the studio now, I'm really delighted to join us, former Metropolitan Police Detective, Chief Inspector Mike Neville. Afternoon to you. Thank you for coming into the studio. Extraordinary, we've had this amazing breaking news in the last half hour of the Defence Secretary has resigned, John Healey has resigned, and that's about our external defences. But actually, it does tie on in terms of our ability to defend our country from internal issues at all, and that's what we largely rely on the police to do. And these stories, it's amazing how much they tie in with, what we've been talking about with this horrific, migrant crime, spate of crimes we've got. We've got a man, an alleged Belfast knife attacker, Hadi Al-Adid. He is behind bars. He's been charged with attempted murder. We've had horrific scenes on the streets of Belfast the last couple of nights. Violent racist thuggery. I think we can all agree. Police officers injured, water cannon used and the like. Focus, as always, though, we've been discussing it all day and yesterday as well, always on the consequences rather than the actual causes, why people are angry, why these crimes happen in the first place.
Well, of course, there's no excuse for the sort of violence and wickedness in this all, but it's tracing it back to why it happens. And when you have generations of people just simply voting for things and voting, we want lower immigration, and and politicians don't just actively ignore them, they condemn them. You know, so for 3 decades we've had people just describe anybody discussing discussing immigration was described as racist, and you had the sort of it was personified in the attitude of Hilary Benn in Parliament the other day when he was asked a question by the Ulster MP Jim McAllister about alien cultures, and he sort of just what is that? What is that? And that response sums up the attitude of the political classes. And as I say, these riots are unacceptable. But the other problem as well, I was a soldier in Northern Ireland in the 80s. And the trouble with all this is that the trouble with Ulster is they're very good at organising riots. They've got the organisation of the paramilitaries and things like that who can still control communities, and so it is a powder keg always ready to go off. And this immigration thing is the latest fuse that's been put in the Ulster powder keg, and it's just tragic. The politicians need to address this. So when the Prime Minister, for example, comes out, he comes out on we condemn all this thuggery, what he should be saying is, and we recognise that there's a real concern in the public about this immigration issue, and here's my solution. But there's not.
There's none of that.
It's
but
condemnation.
Also, it's the likening, lumping all into one bag. The violent thugs who are going door to door, races. You've got brown skin, I want you out, and firebombing people's homes. Disgusting, appalling behaviour. We should all condemn. And almost goes without saying. Like we need. I condemn a beheading as well. I mean, like, does that not go without saying? But lumping everyone who expresses concern into the same basket is part of the problem, and I think they do that. But I keep saying that the ultimate crime is not the actual, illegally entering a country or committing a rape or a murder or attempted murder. The crime is us noticing it and seeing the pattern. But the reality is, the people who go out on the streets, these young men. You can look at them, they're just like, they're looking for a bit of action. Same as the people who got arrested, most of them, not the people who wrote tweets at Southport. The people who were throwing bricks at the police, who were attempting to firebomb, who were surrounding hotels, they aren't, I'm sorry, they're not ordinary law-abiding citizens. No. Most of the people who got convicted in Southport for actual physical violence and threats were people who had a long history
and
of
domestic violence, things
domestic violence, long history of criminality, drugs. There's the people who go and think that their big cause during whatever a riot is on the streets is involves stealing trainers from JD Sports. I mean, come on, we know these people are, but they're not represented. But that doesn't mean that the people who aren't on the streets aren't angry.
That's right, and a lot of people, and also you've also got the added mix in Northern Ireland of the sort of hypocrisy of the leader of Sinn Féin condemning rioting, a party which used to say we'll use the bomb and the ballot box. Absolutely wild. But see the hypocrisy of that. But I think the other thing is, what are we doing with these young men? These young men who are throwing bricks and rocks. Would I suggest, if they were directed in the right way, and I've found this working with young offenders myself, they would be far better directed into the armed forces where their aggression and could be channeled for the good of the nation. But it's not being. We're just leaving them out.
How much do you mean? It is very interesting that we have the likes of the government's terror advisor, Jonathan Hall, Casey, warning about how migration is a national security issue. He said the violence by newly arrived migrants was becoming more relevant to national security, and he said the attack in Northern Ireland had been extraordinarily destabilising, and he's written a long article. He's making a lot of points about this. Now, when the likes of Nigel Farage, not holding a candle for any particular party, but when the likes of Nigel Farage or Rupert or anyone else, when they say these things, they are accused of being far right and racist and stirring up trouble. This is a man he's the independent reviewer of terror legislation. He's saying there's an issue. He can't be written off like that. The reality is there are millions and millions of people in this country, I would think the majority, who are saying, we've got a problem, we want you to deal with it. You keep telling us you're going to deal with it, you won't deal with it. And when we say we want you to deal with it again and we get angry, and some people go on the streets, you just call us racist, you just say we're, you know... how much of a powder keg do you think the country is, given that we're not really a riotty kind of people?
That's right. They can see the difference in Northern Ireland with the mainland, I suggest. If this was France, there'd be almighty riots. But all the time, every incident just gets worse and worse. And you see people who are more and more frightened, more and more concerned, and feel... and the worst thing, feel more and more ignored and pushed down. I think that's what's really impacted on people. They feel ignored, and that if they speak out. But the good thing is these days, Julia, I think, because of, and I say this all the time, because of stations like Talk, we're allowed to say things that 10 years ago we would have been shut down for saying.
Absolutely.
And so we can at least discuss. And they have to. It's forced the hand in the sense that if you look at, they had to tell us, didn't they, that this man was from Sudan. They had to tell us his immigration status. 2 years ago they weren't telling that. And the analogy I draw all the time is this: I'm a big fan of the dam busters, and when that first bomb dropped, it didn't breach the dam, but you saw a little trickle of water, and you knew the wall was gone. And I think we're at that moment where the government, their dam of keeping people silent, shutting them up, that first bomb has hit and it's trickling over the top, and any more and the dam will go.
Fantastic analogy. Great to get you in. Mike Neville, former Metropolitan Police Detective Inspector. Thank you very much indeed for that. Now, just before we go to a break, and we are going to be talking to Andrew Fox in just a couple of moments, and more from Philip Ingram as well about that resignation of the Defence Secretary John Healey over basically complete lack of funding for, well, our defence needs, keeping the country safe. Let me tell you, you must have already known, the FIFA World Cup kicks off today. Our friends at TalkSport are sending you and a mate straight to New York City with Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier. It's the ultimate trip to watch England face Panama live at the MetLife Stadium. Return flights, hotel, match tickets and spending money, it's all taken care of. Plus, Adidas is throwing in the official Triundo match ball and a fresh pair of boots. So don't miss out. Here's how to enter.
For your chance to win, head to our friends at talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close on the 12th of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Breaking news in the last half hour or so. The Defence Secretary, John Healey, has resigned, making it very clear this is over the simple matter of we do not have enough money for defence to protect our country. Absolutely key words. He said he's been forced no other option to submit his resignation as your Defence Secretary. He says simply because the money that is being offered under the Defence Investment Plan, we've been waiting for this for over a year. He says that will not meet the moment that is needed. And he says it will reduce the readiness of our forces, increase risk to personnel and, crucially, could make the country less safe. Philip Ingram is a former senior military intelligence officer. Just been looking at what some of the analysis, some of the revelations we're getting from the defence editor at the Times. She's saying what?
Yeah, Larissa Brown, she's saying John Healey was offered only 10 billion extra money for the Ministry of Defence.
28 billion is the figure that everyone pretty much agrees is needed.
There was 13.5 billion, of which only 10 billion was real cash. Military chief said the rest was Treasury trickery, and that's only 0.08 of GDP.
It's absolute nonsense, nowhere near where we need. Absolutely. Well, look, let's talk about this with Andrew Fox, Senior Associate Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. He's also a former Major in the Parachute Regiment and joins us once again this week. Andrew, thanks for joining us again. I spoke to you only the other day, but I mean, I suppose some very sort of surprise news, but perhaps not so much of a surprise, given we've been waiting for over a year after the Strategic Defence Review for this announcement on what we're going to spend on defence, and there isn't any money apparently.
Well, that's right. And look, we've had the Strategic Defence Review, we've had the Defence Industrial Strategy, and this was the thing we've all been waiting for, which is the Defence Investment Plan.
But it's basically the money. Where's the money coming from?
Where's the money? Yeah. So we've had all these great ideas. We've got all these foundational documents that tell us what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. This was meant to tell us how we're going to pay for it. And the answer seems to be that we can't. And all credits to John Healey for doing the honourable thing. He knows the impact of this. He knows how catastrophic it is at a time of global instability not to have our defences where we need them to be. And he has fallen on his sword as a result.
And it is extraordinary. We've had numerous defence secretaries, Tories, Ben Wallace and others. They come out and they immediately, we know they're battling behind the scenes, and then they immediately say, look, I've been trying to battle behind the scenes. Former, chiefs of defence staff. We've had Lord Robertson. I mean, he was a man who's trusted by Keir Starmer as a former defence secretary, former NATO secretary general, and former, and a Labour man through and through to carry out the Strategic Defence Review. He said, my God, we're at risk. We need to spend more money, and even that wasn't enough. Everyone who knows anything about this subject knows we need to spend the money. What is stopping the Prime Minister doing it? Because it's very telling that in this letter, that John Healey, it's a very lengthy letter, he talks about them identifying the issue, and he says, since then, to the Prime Minister, you have been unable, and the Treasury has been unwilling to commit the resources the nation needs to defend the country at this time of rising threats. What does he mean by unable?
Well, I think if we go back to last year, we can talk about how the government effectively bottled it on welfare reform. I think they hung their costed manifesto, as they called it, way back before the election. They hung all of that on making these welfare reforms happen. They were politically unpopular. They bottled it. And now the money that they want isn't there. And in spite of all the tax rises, they've decided that money needs to go elsewhere into the various other sectors of the state sector. And now defence is left holding the can without the money it needs.
Indeed. As my guest, Philip Ingram, was saying a little bit earlier, there are no votes in defence spending, but of course there are no votes in the war either, are there, if we face a possible invasion. But again, people aren't expecting, Russia to roll their tanks over on ferries across the Channel. That's not how wars are fought right now.
They're not, and I would point to the Strait of Hormuz actually as a great example of this, because at the moment that strait is shut. Yes, the Americans are getting some tankers through, but not enough. That means the world economy takes a hit. We go into global inflation, we go into global rising oil prices, and the British military does not have the facility to affect that in any way at all. So there's a direct line from a lack of defence capability to the amount of money you're paying at the pump or in the supermarket for your goods in your daily life. So defence is really important, and government has completely failed to make that case. It's not about tanks and ships rolling over the Channel. It's about global security in an insecure world.
Yeah, and it's about being able to defend our economic, our national, our defence interests, which we say we've been clearly unable to do during this Iran conflict. And again, for the whole of Europe to be able to provide enough resources to Ukraine when Donald Trump pulls out his support. Andrew Fox, so appreciate you joining us at very short notice there from the Henry Jackson Society. Just coming back to you, Philip Ingram, in the studio. This is it again. Everyone, we know what's needed. I mean, I'm not sure we're going to spend the money wisely, but what, do you think anything will change as a result of this?
Well, I hope it does. There's another significant line in John Healey's resignation letter, which said, however, your defence investment plan financial settlement, which I was only given in full on Monday afternoon this week, falls well short of what is required for defence in the country at this
we believe
time.
He doesn't give the figures, but it's been leaked only in real terms an increase of 10 billion quid, when actually what people are talking about is something in the region of 28 billion.
Exactly.
I would say that's probably half what we need to be spending.
That was just enough to keep us ticking over at the level we're at, not to develop against the threat that we've got.
It's genuinely really quite terrifying, isn't it? It's an absolute...
We are...
but I mean, all credit. I've never been that big a fan of John Healey, to be honest. But I think it's honourable for him to do this. So many people have said, well, I wanted to speak out, but he knows that him resigning will be such a big statement. Yeah. And he also probably may know that, let's be honest, that the Prime Minister may not have long anyway.
Well, and when Andy Burnham fails to get elected, then John Healey's in a perfect position to put himself up for the leadership.
Well, indeed. Of course, I'm sure we haven't got time to read out all the Makerfield candidates. Thank you very much, everyone, for mentioning by-elections. But someone else will read them out in the next hour or so. I'm sure he may be. Ian Collins, who's just joined us in the studio.
He was never a big Healey fan, you know. He's never really.
I just find him a little bit pompous, but if